Tonight, the finale of the Texas Size Senate Showdown. Senator Ted Cruz and Congressman Beto Rourke dueling at the polls. And in just minutes, the results.
Their battle playing into a national story of the Republican fight to keep control of Congress and the Democrats' attempt to take it. Could the House tip to the left? And the mayor versus the firefighters union. An end to the debate over pay parity. What the voters decided.
And good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for being here with us on ABC13.com here on this election night. I'm Chauncey Glover.
And I'm Mayra Moreno. This is your voice, your vote. We will have everything you need to know for election 2018,
That's
of course.
Right. We also have crews scattered all over our area. They're watching those races closely. Of course, we'll be going out to these reporters for live updates on the key races and also the issues that you want to know about.
Yeah, thanks so much for joining us tonight. Of course, we have teams all over, as you mentioned, and we will track the results live. And you can go to our free news app, ABC13. That's how you can get the news when we do. We will send you alerts for all of the biggest races, but you can also see the data in real time. So that's something really good and handy to have.
And of course, today, everything has been election, polls. The biggest development coming in the last couple of hours. Some polls here in Harris County will stay open for another hour. We know this is not the first time something like this has happened. This also happened during the presidential election, if you might remember. But they filed a lawsuit. A lawsuit was filed that says polls were unlawfully delayed. Of course, some voters were also talking about and complaining about malfunctioning of equipment there.
Yeah, so we're going to go to ABC13 reporter Christine Dobbin. She's at the polls today and just joins us now live with more on what you're saying, Christine.
Well, just behind me, we're at one of those 9 locations that is actually staying open for an extra hour. This is a community center just on the edge of downtown. And we have been talking with voters who are coming and going, and many of them, whether they tried to vote this morning or not, they're glad this decision was made. There were multiple problems reported at these various locations at times, whether it was some type of machine location or the doors weren't unlocked. So 2 nonprofit organizations filed a temporary restraining order asking Judge Ed Emmett as well as Stan Stannard, the elections administrator, if these locations could stay open until 8 o'clock. That was granted by both of those groups. And so now voters are being given an extra hour. Now, we did also speak with the county attorney's office. They tell us this will likely delay early vote counts. We may see some of these returns, of course, come in a little bit later. They say they don't believe the lawsuit actually demonstrated that any voters were actually turned away, but they decided to grant this in an effort to be fair to all of those voters. So a lot of the voters going in, we talked with one man, his girlfriend actually had some problems. She's going in to vote right now. So those 9 locations, we're going to see those returns come in a little bit later as these polling sites stay open until 8 o'clock. Mayra and Chauncey.
All right, thank you so much, Christine. So early voting surpassed turnout for the entire 2014 midterm election. But aside from the massive turnout at the polls, voters on both sides have encountered some issues. Some voters who selected straight ticket for Democrats say that the machine changed their senator to Ted Cruz. And then voters selected straight ticket Republican. Senator Cruz was not unselected and no one was chosen at all. So it was a very problem election officials say could affect everyone no matter who you vote for.
That's right. And tonight, of course, is the culmination of a brutal and expensive race to represent the Lone Star State in the Capitol. We're live in with both campaigns right now. Eyewitness News reporter Tom Abrams is live for us there at Senator Cruz's watch party. He's been out there all day. What's it like out there tonight, Tom?
Within the last 15 minutes or so the energy beginning to pick up here. And right now I'm joined by Senior Campaign Advisor Ron Naring with the Ted Cruz campaign. Thanks for being with us. Tell us the mood going into today. I know the last couple of weeks especially have been pretty intense in terms of getting out the vote.
Sure, it's been a very competitive campaign, but it's one which is ultimately going to yield a great night for Texas Republicans, starting with the U.S. Senate campaign at the top of the ticket, moving on to the governor's race, statewide offices, majority of the congressional delegation, majority in the state legislature and local offices. So we're going to have a good night for Republicans in Texas.
Why so confident?
Well, Senator Cruz has done a great job representing Texas values and standing up for Texas in the United States Senate, whether it's on issues related to jobs, preserving our liberty and freedom, or security. Senator Cruz has been leading and fighting, putting Texas first.
And while the national Republicans have been talking immigration quite a bit, and while he's certainly touched on it, Senator Cruz made it very clear that his top priority was the economy. That's an old adage in politics, right? Making it about the economy.
Yeah, so Senator Cruz has said in multiple rallies and town halls, and he's done 50 of them just in the last 6 weeks, that his #1 priority in the Senate is jobs, jobs, jobs. So here in Texas, where oil production is up by 33%, and Texas is the #1 state for the growth of real income of any state in the country, that's the type of results that we want to keep going.
So O'Rourke had $70 million, not including outside money, for this campaign.
Yeah.
A lot of small dollar donations, a lot of yard signs everywhere. Even as an incumbent, that seems like a big battle to fight. How did you do that? How did you strategize the last several months of this campaign?
Well, the first thing is that no matter how much money you throw at Texas from the left, coming out of Hollywood or Manhattan or wherever, it doesn't change the fact that we have a conservative state that wants to elect conservative elected officials. And Beto O'Rourke tried to cover the fact that he's running to the left of Bernie Sanders, to the left of Elizabeth Warren, and compensate for that with $70 million worth of money. And that's not going to change that outcome. You cannot change someone fundamentally when you're running so far to the left. So it's, in a way, it's a little surprising that you would have a statewide Democratic candidate choose to run so far to the left and just try to compensate for it with money. That doesn't compete with Senator Cruz standing up for the values that Texans cherish.
Thank you very much, Ron Naring. We appreciate your time. Thanks for joining us live here on ABC13.com and the ABC13 app. Chauncey and Myra, the campaign tells me, and they've been telling me for the last several days, they feel confident, but they're not taking anything for granted. They've really spent these last couple of weeks, not just with the candidate on the road, but also with a very targeted, organized get out the vote campaign, both phone calls, door knocking, and advertising, hoping to make the difference in these final days and hours after the polls close.
Thank
All
you,
right,
Tom.
Tom.
Out there. Of course, we know
Yeah.
that is a very, very close race. Both sides have obviously been out there campaigning really, really hard towards the last minute.
And a lot of people got to have their fingers crossed. They're sitting on pins and needles, waiting to see those first set of numbers come in that particular race as well.
Yeah. So up next, if you've ever had jury duty or maybe dealt with the court system in Harris County, you're going to be familiar with our next guest that we have here.
That's right. He's also up for re-election, and one of the candidates talking with us tonight. We're talking about Chris Daniel, the county clerk there. Thank you so much for being here with us tonight. And I want to start with the latest, what we've been talking about with this lawsuit. Some of the polling locations now open an hour after they were set to close, which was at 7 o'clock. And this lawsuit was filed by the Texas Civil Rights Project, and they actually filed it in your court, if I'm not mistaken.
Correct, in our system.
In your system.
And as the district clerk of Harris County, being in charge of the court records, we impact all of Harris County one way or another. With regard to this case, what we're finding out now is that the county attorney and the county clerk have come to an agreement that everybody that votes after 7 p.m. that's not in line by 7 p.m., those votes are going to be cast provisionally. And that at these 9 locations, they will then canvass those provisional ballots after the fact, and hopefully it doesn't have an impact in this election. One way or another, whether it's a blue wave or a red wave, hopefully this isolated incident doesn't have a major impact in the election results. It's at 9 locations. They're not isolated to one area. They're spread throughout the county. They tend to be Democrat-leaning ballot boxes. Nevertheless, at stake is the fundamental right to vote, and whether or not these folks were impacted one way or another when they tried to come this morning, whether it was a technical glitch, whether it was a delay in setting up, whatever the delays were. Frederica Phillips did issue the TRO, and the agreement is that everybody gets to vote up until 8 p.m., and that anybody after 7 p.m., those ballots will be cast provisionally.
All right, Chris.
All right, we now want to head to El Paso. Ted Oberg has been out there all day. He is with Beto O'Rourke's campaign, and he's at a baseball stadium tonight there, I understand, or some kind of stadium. Ted?
All right. He might not be ready. He's busy, but he is with Beto O'Rourke, of course. He's hoping to take the seat, and a lot of folks are wondering if the Democrats will, of course, take over.
And we talked about the red wave, blue wave. So So when it comes to these problems, at the polls, a lot of people really take heart to this because, now more than ever, I feel like they want to make sure that their voices are heard and their vote counted.
Exactly.
Now, with all of these races in the election, how does your system, how does this in your position, how does it help when it comes to elections?
First of all, I think we're in the middle of a renaissance with regard to voting. that both sides are energized, both sides are excited to take part in this local system. And that when we are dealing with your judges, your tax assessor collector, your sheriff, your DA, your district clerk, your county clerk, these are offices that you deal with every day, whether it's your marriage license, filing a divorce, whether it's jury duty, whether it's being arrested or having to bail a friend out. One way or another, you're dealing with these local offices, so it matters. And being excited about Beto O'Rourke or Ted Cruz, that trickles down all the way to the bottom. And it makes it much more important that we focus on who these candidates are that we're voting on.
Yeah, we can't forget some of those smaller races. Okay, now I want to head
Now
back
we're
out.
going to head to Ted Oberg out there in El Paso. So Ted, you've been obviously there with Beto O'Rourke. What are you seeing? How is he feeling at this time?
Well, right now he is likely still working the polls. You know, they don't close here until 8 o'clock Houston time, and he said he was going to visit every El Paso polling place after he voted this morning at 7 o'clock with his wife Amy and his 3 children. They were out early, and then he took his kids to school. I think after all of this, after a very divisive campaign, that's sort of a great reminder. I think Ted Cruz was able to spend some time with his family, and Beto O'Rourke able to spend some time taking his kids to school. These are 2 men who spend an awful lot of time away from their wives and their families, and so an interesting point to sort of bring home on this election night. But right here at the ballpark, Southwest University Park, it is hard to see, but call an audible and let David show you. First off, there is a crush of cameras here. Beto is a certified star both across Texas and across this country, and you can judge that by just how many cameras are here to capture whatever he says on the stage behind me in a couple hours from now. The one thing that everyone is, there are really 2 things that I think the campaign and everyone who is watching this campaign closely is thinking about. One is that record early vote, nearly 5 million voters across Texas. I'm sure you've talked about it, but the Beto campaign is clearly convinced that they were able to bring some new people out. The record numbers of young voters, and Beto O'Rourke in his speeches as he's closed his campaign has talked a lot about the power of young voters and first-time voters and how much they have meant to his campaign. The question is, can the campaign replicate that today? And one of the things we saw earlier today, no lines outside Harris County polling places when Sky Eye went to look. The few anecdotal things I've been able to gather here in El Paso, not a whole lot of long lines at polling places, but does that say anything about the campaign, or does that just say something about where Sky Eye looked and the people that I talked to? That's why you got to wait till the votes to be counted. So I think they are confident or maybe hopeful, but certainly not guaranteeing anything. They know that this would be history if they could pull this off tonight. And it is quite a leap for them. Remember, Beto O'Rourke is not a centrist Democrat. He is not trying to pull votes away from Ted Cruz. He is building his own coalition, and that's what we're looking to see, if that coalition can pull him over the edge to a victory on the stage behind me, guys.
All right, Ted, thank you so much. We're going to go back to our teams out in the field, of course, covering every angle of election 2018. But now we want to introduce to you our very next guest.
That's right, Dr. Stephen Kleinberg. He is with Rice University's Kaiser Institute for Urban Researchers. Thank you. I'm Chauncey Glover. Thanks so much for being with us tonight. We know you're a busy man, but we want to talk about you've mainly studied and spent so much time talking about the people voting, not so much the process and all that. And that's what I want to start with tonight. You talked about shifting attitudes. We know this midterm election, we saw historic and high voter turnout. Do you think it is because of those attitude shifts within people?
Well, it's absolutely fascinating time. I mean, the mobilization on both sides, right? And totally difficult to predict, even more so than usual, because who's going to vote?
Yes.
But the big story is, we've been doing a survey for 37 years, taking a representative random sample of Harris County residents, asking people in the privacy of their homes, how do you see the world? And you get a very different picture, a growing embrace of diversity, support for more money to be spent on education, concern about the inequalities in the city that doesn't come out in the politically effective opinion.
What are the key differences that you see, or some of those those glaring differences that you see when you talk to those people in their homes?
Yeah, well, who votes? Who controls the political apparatus? Who makes contributions to the politicians? Who redistricts reconfigures the districts. Exactly. So that one example is Austin, Texas, the most liberal city in Texas, the capital of socialist Texas, has 6 representatives in the House of Representatives. 5 of them are Republicans, and only 1 is a Democrat. The redistricting that has taken little pieces of Austin and expanded it out into the boondocks, where the Republicans are. So it's an interesting. What you're seeing here, I think, is a growing redefinition
diverse.
of growing outpouring of those folks who are rarely heard in the political arena. And it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out as the evening progresses.
All right, Dr. Kleinberg, you're going to stick around here with us for just a little bit, but I think right now we're going to head over to one of our other reporters out in the field right now, and I believe we're going over to Stephen Romo.
Hi, Stephen.
Where's Stephen?
All right, we don't have Stephen, but we want to go out live now to Shelley. Shelley, where are you and how's it looking where you are? Okay, we don't have Shelley or Stephen. You guys let me know when we have a reporter to actually toss to, so we'll go back to you.
A question here for you.
Okay,
so Texas is very diverse, obviously, but I feel we have more Hispanics now than ever before. Can you talk to us about that and how that could possibly impact what's going to happen here in election 2018?
Right, well, so the Hispanic population of Harris County is now 41% of the total
Right.
population. It was 6% back in 1960, right?
Wow, amazing.
And the Anglo population that was 74% in 1960 is 31% today. So it's a truly remarkable, fundamental transformation. A city that had been a biracial southern city dominated by white men becoming the most ethnically diverse major city in the country.
Got you.
And of course, Latinos are the largest community and the least likely to vote, and that's where so much of the disjuncture between public opinion and politically effective opinion.
Very fascinating there, and I got to get.
I've
got to get some insight on your research. I want some, inside ball game there on that. All right, thank you so much for watching here at ABC13.com. Of course, we've got a full night of election coverage for you, but we're going to go now, and of course, we'll be also on the broadcast side for our cut-ins. But we'll see you back here with another team in a few minutes.
Two and three. And R doesn't have an IP.
I'm on 2. I got it. Number 2.
And R doesn't have an IFB box.
Level check 1 2. Level check 1 2. 1 2 1 2 3 4.
1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2 3 4.
Good evening, everyone. While most voting locations are now closed, you still have another half hour to get in line at 9 places. I'm Art Rascone.
And I'm Melanie Lawson. A judge ordered those 9 places to stay open until 8 o'clock after the Texas Organizing Project sued Harris County, saying those polls failed to open on time this morning. That also means election results will be delayed in Harris County. We won't have those numbers, early voting numbers, until after 8 o'clock. Eyewitness News reporter Christine Dobbin is live at one of those locations. And Christine, do you still have people in line?
We have seen people in line inside, Melanie, and this, of course, a pretty unusual decision. We are just outside of one of 9 locations, voting locations, that are staying open until 8 o'clock. We're just on the edge of downtown. We have been talking with voters as they are coming and going, and they say they are glad this decision was made. This was one of the locations that had some issues this morning. Now, there was a nonprofit organization that actually filed this, asking for the extension. The county judge and the elections administrator both granted this after these problems were reported reported in a variety of ways. Sometimes callers actually called a hotline. Other times there were election monitors witnessing this. Reporting live near downtown, Christine Dobbin, 13 Eyewitness News.
All right, Christine, thank you so much for that report. Well, one of the most hotly contested races, and certainly the most watched nationwide, is the race for Senate. Senator Ted Cruz is looking to defend his seat from challenger El Paso Congressman Beto O'Rourke. It is the most expensive race in the country right now. Art?
Yes, and of course, right now as well, tonight Senator Ted Cruz is watching the results from the Galleria area, and that is where we find Eyewitness News reporter Tom Abrams. Tom, what's the atmosphere like there early in this night?
It is very early in the night, and as you look at some of these early numbers, Art and Melanie, you'll see that Beto O'Rourke is up by about 5%. But we were also told that we were to expect that given the early vote and how that might favor him somewhat. And so we know these early returns aren't necessarily going to be indicative of the final results tonight. They let people in here to the party about half an hour ago. They're beginning to fill in. Behind our camera, there is a much larger crowd watching on large screens the results as they come in. Still very early in the evening, hard to get a gauge for whether or not the people in the room are aware of these early results, but of course we'll keep watching them for you and bringing you the latest from here in the Galleria. The campaign saying they're confident but not taking anything for granted. Reporting from the Galleria tonight, Tom Abrams, 13 Eyewitness News.
Still a long night ahead indeed. Thank you, Tom. Continuing the coverage here. Meantime, Congressman Beto O'Rourke, this man right here, he is in El Paso at their baseball stadium there. Eyewitness News reporter Ted Oberg live there with how is he feeling. Ted?
Certainly not going to promise anything. Just talked to Julian Castro from San Antonio, a supporter, a congressman and supporter of Beto O'Rourke. He said he feels like this is the night for Texas Democrats to get over the line there. Some interesting results, though, from the early waves of ABC News election exit polls. Republicans and Democrats shrinking the gap in this year's election compared to other elections. But another interesting point, 42% of Texas voters saying Beto O'Rourke too liberal to win in Texas. Take a look at how O'Rourke spent the day. He voted early this morning with his wife there and his 3 children at a community college nearby. Then he said he was going to every El Paso polling place, including, every one. And then look at this second tweet later in the day, thanking Beyonce for supporting his race there. Beyonce, obviously, a one-time Texan, now supporting Beto O'Rourke. Many hours left to go before we see Beto on that stage behind us. Guys, back to you.
Thank you, Ted. Appreciate that reporting. We have all of the numbers here. We're going to be having them for you all election evening. There is a lot going on, and we have a lot of reporters just about everywhere.
That's exactly right. You want to download the ABC13 News app because we are live streaming our election coverage as we talk with political analysts in our newsroom. We'll also send you push alerts just as soon as we get new information, especially those numbers.
And you can also visit abc13.com/election. You can read up on all the various latest races. We will be back on TV in 30 minutes. See you then.
Election coverage.
Boy, I'm Alona Carson. We are in the thick of things here in the newsroom, and we are starting to get some of the numbers trickling into the newsroom. These are the early voting numbers, and these are always the first numbers that we see as we follow all of the developments happening around Harris County, which we'll get to in just a moment with some of those polling locations. But it looks like we are starting to get some early voting numbers, very small numbers, concerning our props.
Yeah, let's start with that right now. And this is the city's Houston Proposition A, which, as you probably know by now, establishes pay-as-you-go funds for enhancing and improving drainage and flooding issues here in Houston. So right now, again, early numbers here, 79% for Prop A at just over 5,600 votes. And it's a 1,500 votes against right now, coming in at 21%. Again, this is for the early vote, and important to note there. Now, for City of Houston Proposition B, this requires pay equity for firefighters to essentially get paid the same as Houston police officers. Right now, early votes again, 59% for at just over 4,200. Against right now, 2,900 votes coming in at 41%. So it looks like right now with early votes again, this is hard to tell anything. Prop A leading for with 79% of the vote, and the City of Houston Prop B for at 59% of the vote. Both of those leading to pass at this point.
Also getting some early numbers for U.S. Representative District 22. This is Pete Olson's seat. Pete Olson leading right now with 52% of the votes that we have to Cole Carney's 46%. So 52 to 46%. Pete Olson leading that race, but I think surprisingly close as we take a look at those numbers, and so we will continue to see whether that trend holds. Now, we talked about a few problems out there tonight with our polling locations.
That's one of the other big headlines today. Some issues, polls not opening on time here in Harris County, at least 9 of them. Eyewitness News reporter Christine Dobbins has been following this closely. Christine, what's the latest? I know you all at this point we're going to stay open another hour for 8 or 9 locations here in Harris County.
Eric, in talking with voters, a lot of them say they believe it is the right decision. This is one of the locations that is staying open until 8 o'clock tonight, just on the edge of downtown off Allen Parkway, a community center. And there are 9 locations throughout the county that are going to stay open until 8 o'clock tonight. This was all brought on by 2 nonprofit organizations, Watchdogs for Voters, who filed a TRO asking that these locations stay open later because problems were reported. We know that County Judge Ed Emmett, as well as Stan Stannard, the elections administrator, agreed to this, so they will stay open later. Some of the problems reported varied from issues with the machines to people saying the doors were not unlocked. Perhaps they were on their way to work and they had to go before the doors were actually open. So that is why they're giving voters in these areas that extra time to vote tonight. The county attorney, though, saying this is obviously going to have an impact on how soon all those returns can come in as they have to wrap up things at each location here. Reporting live near downtown, Christine Dobbin, 13 Eyewitness News.
All right, a big headline right there as well. Christine, thanks a lot for the live update. Let's go now to Congressional District number 2 here. It's a race that was vacated by Ted Poe, retiring after several years in that seat.
We've got a couple of newbies in this race, and an interesting race where we really didn't see any mudslinging. Let's go out to Eyewitness News reporter Nick Notario, and he is with the Crenshaw camp out there. Hey, Nick.
Hi there, guys. You know, I've been to a lot of political parties over my career, and this one has a different feel. Crenshaw's only 34, millennial, and it certainly has the feel of a millennial party. There's an artist up there airbrushing his image. There's bags of popcorn with his signature look and face. There's also a spot, it's almost like a sports area where you can take a photo and upload it to social media. Of course, Crenshaw got into this race about a year ago. He did so after he was volunteering during Hurricane Harvey, and recently he's got a lot of a national attention because of what happened on Saturday Night Live, in which a comedian made fun of his injury that he sustained while serving overseas with the SEALs. Now we're going to be joined by one of his campaign strategists right here, Brendan. Tell us, first of all, How are you and the rest of the campaign doing as this thing comes to an end?
Well, we're feeling really good about what we've done from day one when Dan launched. He's a great candidate. He's been an absolute delight to work with, and his unique candidacy with his story has been really powerful from the beginning. He's only been able to gain in support from the day he launched, so that's been a really unique experience. We're really just proud to work with him, and we're very excited to see how the results look tonight.
I know it's the first time he's run this kind of campaign. How's he doing right now? Is he taking a breath, a sigh of relief finally after months of campaigning?
Yeah, I think he feels really good. He knows that he left nothing on the field, so to speak, that he worked hard from day one. He has run through the finish line. We've done everything to get out the final vote. He was out there working today, talking to voters, just like he started the campaign, one by one, telling them about his story and asking them for their support. So he feels really good about where he's at. I think he's relaxed. He's looking forward to seeing the results start coming in.
I know I mentioned Saturday Night Live. Tell us how that has impacted your campaign, and have you guys heard it all from the show after what happened?
Yeah, the momentum for Dan was definitely picking up even before that. During early voting, we started to see a lot of good signs. But when Saturday Night Live kind of made fun of Dan for his war wound, the organic reaction for supporting Dan and people who were upset with SNL was something I've never seen before. We had hundreds and hundreds of people writing us, emailing us, coming to the website saying, "We support you, we stand with you." It was like something I'd never seen. And SNL actually did, their producers did actually make an apology to him.
And where is he right now? Do you know what he's having to eat? Is he relaxing with his wife?
He is with his wife and his family, and having a minute to relax and kind of get his thoughts together and think about what's coming here with the results, and then also getting ready to talk to his many supporters who are here. And frankly, he would tell you he would not be where he is without the people in this room.
All right, Brennan, thank you very much. Of course, we're going to stay out here at the Crenshaw campaign, and when he speaks later this evening, you will hear it first right here on ABC 13. Live in the Galleria, Gubernatorial, 13 Eyewitness News.
All right, Nick, thank you. Certainly a lively crowd out there. And on the other side of that race is Tom Litton, and we're watching that one very closely, too.
Eyewitness News reporter Shelley Childers has been with his campaign all afternoon. Shelley, what's the mood like there tonight?
Well, I can tell you this room is certainly filled up from an hour ago. Very packed. Lots of excited people, lots of hopeful voters in this room right here. We're still waiting on Todd to arrive. We know that he was out at those polls until the very last poll. Well, we still have at least one poll, a couple polls still open, but there are, until those polls closed at 7 o'clock, he was out there meeting with those voters, and so we're still waiting on him here. Of course, this is, just like Dan Crenshaw, he is also new to the political realm. This is his first time ever running for a political office, and he told us earlier this afternoon that it felt like the right move, like the next step in his career. He has spent many years dedicated to nonprofits, to leading them. He did also practice law and worked in investing. So he tells us that just making this move into the political realm, running for a public office, really felt like that next right move to stand up for what he wanted to do. He also told us that his inspiration to run for the very first time ever came after the presidential race. That really motivated him to want to take a public office to make a change for what he thought needed to be changed. Reporting live from the Montrose area, Shelley Childers, back to you guys in the studio.
All right, Shelley, thanks for that live report from there. Okay. Well, if you went to the polls today, you might have been looking for some guidance. What you need to look at as far as the ballot. Where do you need to go to place your vote? Well, the League of Women Voters has a guide with all the information that helped voters out today.
Yeah, Rita Hicks is with the organization, really in charge of the civic engagement and trying to get everybody involved in this. So, Rita, thanks for coming in to join us on this really historic midterm election to see this kind of turnout. But let's start off with those problems with these 9 different polling locations in Harris County needing to stay open until 8 p.m. just to make sure that everybody had their chance to vote. How unusual is it to see that?
You know, every election cycle, there's some polling location that has a problem, a power outage or problems with their machines. That's not uncommon, but it is uncommon to have that many machines have problems all at once. All of these polling locations weren't able to open on time because they were having problems with their machines. That's very uncommon.
So that's staying open that extra hour. I mean, does that remedy the problem and just really make sure this is all above board?
Right. There were a number of people, and we did a phone bank all day. A number of people called because they couldn't get in this morning, had to go to work, and the intent here is that those same people have the opportunity to go back and have their vote count.
Okay, as far as this midterm election has surprised a lot of people in terms of the early vote that came out and also the voting that came out today as well. Is it possible that Harris County Clerk's office got caught off guard by just the number of sheer people coming out to vote in a midterm election?
I think that's entirely possible. You know, there were more votes cast in early voting this year than the entire turnout in 2014. So it wouldn't surprise me at all if the reason why the site crashed this morning is just because that many people were looking for where to go.
Yep. And so obviously this is something that we're going to have to ask questions about in the future, about whether the county is ready on a day like this, especially as, you know, perhaps it's not a one-off and we do see this engagement because of groups like yours getting everybody out to vote. So I know it's been a busy day.
Well, and what I will say is, you know, we were immediately in contact with the voter registrar's office, letting them know the problem existed, and then being a resource to sort of serve as a workaround while they fixed it. But they were very responsive to it. They worked as fast as they could, and I have a feeling that there will be a lot of lessons learned coming out of this, so the next time they will be ready.
All right. Rita Hicks with the League of Women Voters, thank you all for what you do, helping a lot of voters out as well.
We appreciate it. Okay, let's talk about some of the early numbers that we are seeing, because they are starting to come in, and Gina Gaston is over at the Smart Board taking a look at what we're seeing so far. Gina?
Well, Alona and Eric, of course, the big race, one of the biggest here in Texas at least, is the race the whole nation is watching, and that is this one between Beto O'Rourke and Senator Ted Cruz. And right now, with 47% of the expected vote reporting already, you see that Beto O'Rourke has a 53% lead. Now, I want to explain this to you a little bit. When we say 47% expected vote reporting, they're expecting about 8.3 million people are going to vote in this election. And so we have 47% of 8.3 ballots that are tabulated in these numbers right here. So a real stunning outcome right now, early in the evening right now, for Beto O'Rourke, who would be the first Democrat elected to a statewide seat in Texas since Lloyd Benson was last elected back in 1988. Let's take a look at a couple of surprises, too, coming in the national front. Let me take this off here. There have been 2 seats in the House that have gone from red to blue. One of them happening right here. This is in Virginia, Virginia District 10, with 54% of the vote. Wexton is beating Comstock. And then there's another race in Florida. It's really a tiny district down here. I'm not going to touch it. But AP not calling that yet, but some other media outlets are saying, in fact, that a district down here that was red for the House has now turned to Democrat. So we're keeping a watch on all of these throughout the evening. And Alona, I know you'll be out here coming up in the next hour, but some surprising outcomes in this early part of the evening.
Yeah, we were watching Florida and Georgia very closely, Gina, so we're going to have to continue to see how that shapes up. But as you said, some big surprises coming out of there, at least with some of the earlier numbers.
Interesting numbers to look at right now. Okay, now we've got for you Congressman Randy Weber. He joins us, and he represents Texas's 14th district, which includes Galveston and Jefferson counties, along with pieces of Brazoria and Chambers counties as well.
Yeah, so we have a lot to talk about here tonight, because it's important for folks to remember as we came into this midterm, it's not just about what's happening in Washington, D.C. After we went through Harvey, so many folks in your area are still recovering.
They are, Alona. Our 3 counties along the Gulf Coast was ground zero for Harvey flooding. It's unbelievable the amount of destruction. As you already know, there was just so much destruction. I've been in Congress 6 years. You know, we do a lot of things with a lot of different appropriation bills. I have to tell you that we did the appropriation process after Hurricane Harvey in record time. You literally saw the 36 members of the 36 congressional members from Texas come together and vote for Harvey relief funding. Now, there were some who wouldn't vote for it. They were in coastal counties. But I was so excited that, for the most part, we got together in a bipartisan fashion and actually got relief bills passed.
Okay, you've been in your seat for 6 years now. We've been talking about the midterm elections here, how we've seen this huge surge in early voter turnout, and again here today on actual voting day. Why do you think these midterms are so critical at this point?
Eric, I think you're seeing the American people paying attention. You have Donald Trump at the helm, which is no surprise to you. And a lot of people, I think there's a lot of his agenda that's actually on the ballot. You're seeing the economy take off and soar. Like, I'm 65 years old. I became a Republican precinct chair when Ronald Reagan ran for re-election in '83. I've been paying attention a long time. I've never seen it like this. Our economy is rocking and rolling. Now, there's a split on exactly what that means. I get that. You're seeing a split between the Democrats and the Republicans. A lot of people don't like the president's bedside manner, if you will. I get that. But it is absolutely hard to argue against the results. More jobs created. In Texas alone, you know, we've got such a huge uptick. The GDP is 3% and 4%. I've ridden with the president in the limousine, and he told me he thought he could get over 4% even back then, and he was advised during the campaign not to say that because people would laugh at him. But he's repealing regulations with a Republican Congress, I might add. He's rolling back red tape. You've seen him appoint 2 judges of the Supreme Court, federal judges on benches. He's doing exactly what he told people he would do. And so success, he's got a pretty good track record in 2 years.
Okay. And, you know, I guess that so many people saying this is a referendum on the president, and so we will see if that's reflected in the results that we see.
Well, he's getting it done.
Well, we appreciate you coming on in here to hang out with us and watch these numbers come in
Well,
tonight.
thank you. This is going to be a historic night.
Yep.
So thank you.
All right, Congressman Weber, thank you.
Appreciate it.
All right, we're going to hit Beto O'Rourke's campaign shortly, but we want to get you these numbers right now. This is U.S. Representative District 9 right here. This is Al Green's district. He has won. This race has been called. That's information coming into our newsroom right now. He has won his seat again with 88% of the early vote. And again, this race at this point is being called right now.
A resounding victory there for Al Green tonight. In the meantime, we are watching the Beto O'Rourke campaign as he looks to unseat Ted Cruz. In San Antonio tonight, or rather in El Paso, Ted Oberg is there watching all of this go down. And Ted, what's energy feeling like as we start to get some of these early numbers?
Well, it's sort of a quirk of Texas, and I just want to point this out. Here in El Paso, they're still voting. We are so far away from Houston, it's a different time zone out here. There are 2 counties in the far western side of Texas that are mountain time. A very small percentage of the votes. El Paso likely will have maybe 500,000 votes tonight, and the other county maybe will have 10,000. But either way, there are still people voting right now here in El Paso. Beto O'Rourke said he was going to work the polls until the absolute last minute. He is obviously not here at Southwest University Park, their baseball stadium here, although the doors have opened for some of their supporters to start trickling in. He said after the polls close, he will go home here with his wife and a few very close supporters and watch some of the early returns come in. And as you guys have been talking about, the early returns are good for him, but that's expected. Remember, a lot of these early voters are going to, at least the early returns that are reported early on election night, are going to be in big cities, and big cities are traditionally going to go for Beto O'Rourke. The question is, will these giant numbers of early voters be made up of lots of young voters, lots of new voters, lots of liberal, progressive, or moderate voters who might turn out for Beto O'Rourke? That's the thing that they will be watching so closely tonight. Some of the ABC News early exit polls show some of that, and I think ABC News will be reporting that as the evening goes on, and hopefully we'll be able to share some of that with you shortly. But there are a lot of what ifs, and a lot of stuff is going to have to go just perfectly right for the Beto O'Rourke jigsaw puzzle to be put together for a victory tonight. Earlier today, he was confident, but certainly didn't promise anything, didn't promise a win, but said if they could turn out in the numbers that they had turned out in early voting, that it would certainly be a good night and a historic victory celebration on the stage behind me. Eric and Alona.
Okay, certainly waiting for the party to start, and definitely being careful. As you said, we were expecting those numbers to be representative of the areas there. So, Ted, we certainly appreciate the update. Meanwhile, we're wondering what the mood is like with Senator Cruz's camp.
Let's get it back much closer to home now, because that's the Houston, the campaign headquarters for Senator Ted Cruz, working to hold on to his seat tonight. Tom, what's the latest out there? Pretty good crowd.
It is a pretty good crowd, and right now the crowd is actually cheering because of the results that they're seeing on the screen in Georgia in the governor's race, so that's why you hear a cheer. The race here, far too early to really get a handle on anything, but they have to feel good that with the early votes they've seen so far, that the race is as close as it is. I'd heard from those inside the campaign that they expected the early numbers to show O'Rourke with a large lead, and that the numbers would change throughout the night and the gap would lessen So to be as close as it is right now with the numbers that Gina Gaston just shared with you, I'm sure that they feel as confident as they did before the polls closed. We're here in the Galleria. The party started maybe about an hour ago. The people you see here, those that are standing around, tried to get the closest to the stage as they could get. We should get about a half-hour heads up before the senator speaks tonight. We don't have a gauge on when that would be, but we do know it won't be until long after the race has been decided, should that happen tonight. Beyond the camera, something you can't see are several hundred other people who are on the far side. They're closer to the food and drinks. These are the people just essentially holding a spot close to the stage. As for the atmosphere, still lively because they really don't have a gauge as to how this is going one way or the other, but they are paying very close attention. Eric, Alona?
Yeah, I mean, it's got to be that in-between moment where, I mean, the party started, but we don't really know what to celebrate quite yet. So we're going to keep on checking in with you throughout the evening because, yeah, everybody's going to sort of keep it going and then just see how the night rolls on.
It's election night. Okay, another thing you've seen campaigned on a lot is Prop A and Prop B here. Even the mayor taking sides. This has been a long-going feud between firefighters and the mayor on Prop B as well. But let's go out to Stephen Romo, who's been covering this issue all afternoon. Stephen?
Yeah, guys, Mayor Turner will be speaking in just a little bit. You can tell he's not on the ballot this time around. That's why the scene here is not nearly as exciting as it was for Ted Oberg or Tom Abrams. Of course, both propositions that are on the ballot for Houstonians are very important this time around. As you mentioned, things getting pretty heated between the mayor's office and firefighters. Their proposition to raise their pay to equal police officers' pay of similar ranks. That has caused quite a bit of controversy going back and forth. We are eager to hear from Mayor Turner. He was set to speak at 7:30 this evening, but the polling locations, the 9 polling locations that have extended their hours, that has pushed the mayor's comments back by an hour. So we're looking forward to hearing from him in about 40 minutes now. And once we get those comments, we of course will bring them to you live here as well. Guys.
All right, Stephen Romo there with some insight on both those props. Stephen, we appreciate the live update. We also, at this point, want to give you another look at some of those early voting numbers that are starting to trickle in right now. I believe we have some numbers for Beto, Rourke, and Ted Cruz right now. Again, these are the early votes coming in. And you can see this one is pretty close, which a lot of pundits have said this is going to go down to the wire anyway, and it could be a tight race.
And they did expect it to be tight. Also, we are only seeing certain areas of our state reporting. And the couple of large counties that had come in early, Bexar County, which was going to be a toss-up, Dallas County. This isn't a huge surprise with what we're seeing here. So this might not tend to be representative of what we're going to see across the state. As we just heard from Ted Oberg with the Beto campaign, this was something that they expected to be seeing, but still some extremely close numbers right there.
And of course, we've got a lot more coverage throughout the night here at ABC13.com, and then of course continuous coverage at 10 o'clock tonight on ABC 13. But we appreciate you joining us for Your Voice, Your Vote 2018 here, the midterm elections on ABC13.com.
We'll be right back with you.
In some of the numbers. These are early numbers coming in statewide. So far, Beto O'Rourke 50% to Ted Cruz 49%. This is a real nail biter right down to the bottom line.
And look at the bottom screen, the bottom third there, the Houston Prop A, drainage fee, for and against, clearly for one. Prop B, the firefighter pay. Look at that, 42.66 against as well. Speaking of those props, let's take a live picture if we can before we get. Al Green clearly won that one. Yeah. We have already called that race. But let's go ahead and get to a live picture, we understand, of what we have of where Mayor Sylvester Turner is going to be. He is going to be speaking about Prop B. Of course, that's something that he has thrown his support behind.
He actually opposed Proposition B.
He opposed Prop B. He was for A, against B. So we have Corbett Parker here, who is an expert on some of these areas as well regarding these props. Let's talk about that then when the mayor speaks.
Corbett is a former city council member with the city of Bel Air. He must have been 12 at the time that he went into office, but he was with the city of Bel Air. But in the meantime, as an attorney, you're watching a lot of these very closely. We know Proposition A was to sort of continue flood control for the city of Houston. Proposition B really had to do with firefighter pay and a request by the firefighters that it go up a great deal. Are you surprised that both propositions have passed?
Not at all. 8 years ago on Clause A, the voters overwhelmingly supported it. The Supreme Court came back a couple years later and said, oh wait, the voters didn't know they actually had to pay for the fund that they were supporting. Obviously, it got completely overlapped by Prop B. That's where all the money was. That's where all the attention was. You know, Mayor Turner, of course, went all in on 4A against B. He's going to go 1 for 2 tonight. Firefighters had the elevator speech. We protect you just like police. We deserve to be paid equally. You know, Mayor Turner and fiscal conservatives, not people you see on the same side, had the harder speech. You know, they had to explain the history, you know, the pension side of it, the complicated formula, the state legislature, and the inability of the city to get local control over that. And, you know, here we are, and the firefighters are going to overwhelmingly win. Even with conservatives and a liberal mayor, both against it.
But he was so behind that Prop B. Why is it that sort of effort and his enthusiasm there didn't push it forward?
I think because the pay parity sounds great.
Yeah.
I'm a firefighter. I put my life on the line. I rescued your grandmother when she fell down. I got your cat out of the tree. When your house is on fire, there we are. Just like police, we serve and protect. We deserve to be paid the same. It's not apples to apples. Mayor Turner and fiscal conservatives tried to make that example out there. We can't even afford it. There's going to be cuts to city services. Yeah. The problem is like many other debates, the elevator speech wins.
And the way it's going right now, it's on that winning track, of course, and it doesn't look like it's going to be reversing.
Yeah, and a number of the political luncheons and pundits on both sides that I've been going to over the last couple of weeks said they thought it would be 60-40. So they're making the local Houston pundits look smart.
Yeah, exactly. Well, thank you so much,
Sure.
Corbin. We appreciate it. We know you'll be watching this throughout the night. We want to go now to Maya Shea, who is at the Culberson headquarters. He, of course, is the incumbent congressman, and I believe she is standing by live right now with him. Maya?
Yeah, Congressman Culberson is not here yet, but his supporters are. They're just here looking at the early voting results. And I'm just looking at the Harris County early voting numbers that have just been posted. I don't know if you guys have taken a look at that. It shows that Congressman Culberson is actually behind. If I'm reading the numbers correctly, he is at 47.42% in the early voting numbers, and then that Lizzie Fletcher, who is his Democratic challenger, is currently ahead at 52.58%. These are the early voting numbers for Texas Congressional District 7, the race we are at right now. The congressman, of course, hoping for his 10th term, but this has been a major target for national Democrats to pick up. If they were going to pick up any seat in Texas, if they were going to try to flip the House to Democratic control, this was ground zero. And right now, it looks like the Democrats are ahead. If this holds through the course of the night and the actual day of voting comes in, traditionally Democrats tend to have a slight edge on election day because more of them show up actually on election day, but we have to wait to see how the numbers hold out. If Democrats are able to pick up this seat, Congressional District 7, it would be a major pickup because this has been held in Republican hands for 50 years, dating back to former President George H.W. Bush when he was in Congress. But still early right now. We're at 47.5, 52.5. And folks here, most of the folks here have not even seen the early voting numbers. So I'm sure as the information trickle in, they'll be looking at it and, of course, waiting for more numbers. But both sides prepared for a long night. We're not sure when the congressman will be here. That, of course, will depend on the outcome. If they think it's tight and they want to wait until they have a final outcome, it could be quite a while. But the bar's open, and so is the food line. So folks here right now are in still a pretty good mood, but it's tense. I can think in the next 10, 20 minutes, as the numbers start rolling and people become aware, they're going to probably not be as happy unless some better numbers come in. Guys?
Yeah, so far not so good for Culberson. This is a huge, critical race. So many people are watching, not just here, but throughout the nation.
But all over the country,
This is one of those that could sway it toward the Democrat side, at least on the congressional end of things.
And I know that they all along felt as though this was going to be a fairly tight race. Is that right, Maya? We may have lost Maya.
Culberson.
All right. Thank you so much, Maya. We're going to head on over to the opponent's camp at this point, and that is Fletcher. In fact, Jessica Willey is standing by right now. Do not know whether or not Lizzie Fletcher has shown up yet. Is she there, Jessica?
Yep. Hey, guys. Yeah, we are at Lizzie Fletcher's watch party here at Armadillo Palace off Kirby near the Southwest Freeway. And as you can see, the room is starting to fill up. She is not here yet. No results have been shown on the big screens here. So there have been no cheers reacting to what Maya just said in those early voting numbers, but I'm sure they will come once the folks realize what those early voting numbers are. I will tell you that the couple of times that they have that these big screens have shown the early voting numbers as it relates to the Senate race, we heard cheers the first 30 minutes or so. That has changed a little as we see Ted Cruz pulling ahead. Again, we are here at Lizzie Fletcher's watch party. Of course, she's a first-time candidate candidate, a partner at a law firm here in Houston, a native Houstonian. She says the biggest issue she has talked about during her 18-month campaign is affordable health care. She also talks a lot about change in Washington, that she wants to unseat the 9-term Congressman John Culberson, and she has given him quite a run for his money, and really the money she has fundraised him almost 2 to 1, and then able to spend that money on getting her name out there with name recognitions, because that's where she was behind 18 months ago. But now she has that name recognition, and in the early voting, at least very early on, right now it looks like she is leading. This party will begin to fill up. We are live on Kirby in Southwest Houston. Jessica Willey, 13 Eyewitness News.
And Jessica, does she feel like whichever way Beto or Rourke goes, so goes she?
Yeah, I mean, I do think that she feels like the momentum is going to come from Beto, but I think that, we've heard a lot in this district, some folks voting one way and not necessarily straight tickets, in other races voting a different way. So I don't know. It's one of those, I think, that will also be a nail-biter down to the wire, and obviously John Culberson early on has quite a fight on his hands.
Oh, he certainly does. When you're talking 9-term congressman, wow. I mean, if he is unseated on this race, that is huge. Thank you, Jessica. We
certainly some of the most
that.
Colorful commercials against each other throughout the election.
They had a lot of attack ads against each other. For much more on this, let's go to Alona Carson as we look at some of the governor's race here. Greg Abbott clearly running away with this, and he was expected to do so. So that's not a surprise at all as we look at the governor's race.
But again, we're looking at 2% of the precincts in, so although I don't think anyone expects him to be upset tonight, certainly it is going to be a long evening for all of them. Alona Carson standing by in the studio. She's at the smart board right now. And Alona, can you kind of update us on some of these races?
The race that we all want to talk about is that Senate race, right? And I can update you on that, and we have some pretty interesting numbers coming in. Keaton is joining me. He is our numbers guy. He's the numbers producer here, going through all of this data, building these maps. And Keaton, we're going to get to something very interesting that we spotted in just a moment. But first, we've got some overall numbers here that we want to help people be able to see. 50 to 49%, and this is much of the state reporting at this point, but a lot of early voting.
A lot of early voting. So one of the things that we're really talking about, Alona, and I want to point this out, is when we look at this expected vote here, that is because we don't have a total number of voters yet, but we have 2 different sets of voters, right? Early voting and day of voting. So the numbers that we look at are this expected vote. Secretary of State thinks we're going to have about 8.5 million voters. And as we incrementally get there, we're doing a data calculation to get that 55%.
So this is an estimate, but the estimate right now is that about half of the votes from the state of Texas are in, and this is what we are seeing. Now, we have to keep in mind, again, early voting may not be representative of total votes, but we've actually seen this neck and neck all night, and Ted Cruz just recently had a bump up of about 30,000 votes.
The last update we had them about 10,000 votes apart. Now it's 35,000 votes. And Alona, if we can, let's take a look at one of the biggest reasons why, right?
Yes, let's get to this sort of surprise that we saw here.
This is all of the precincts that we're seeing across the board. This right here is very interesting. This is Fort Bend County. This has now broken with 100% of the precincts in for Beto O'Rourke. That is a big deal because he needs to get all of this urban center vote to really come ahead. Now, what we expect to see as this map fills in is a whole lot of red. And as we see that red come in, I think we're going to see that vote total that gap start to widen. But this is very interesting, especially without Harris County.
Well, and the other interesting thing I want to just point out here is that this isn't particularly close. This is 55 to 45%. This is a pretty large gap. And to think that Beto O'Rourke has won Fort Bend County by 10% is pretty surprising.
That's a big deal. And one of the reasons why, Alona, is because when we take a look at the previous vote, this is a map of how Ted Cruz won back in 2012. What's really, really interesting about this is look at Houston. It's red. Houston went for Ted Cruz in 2012. So did Fort Bend County. So did Montgomery County. All of these very urban voters went for Ted Cruz. He not only has to overcome the vote total that will be lost in Houston, but he also has to look for areas like Dallas and Fort Worth. We're really watching Tarrant County as that vote comes in. And then all of this red. That is what will really help him out. But to lose Fort Bend County as well, as I jump back over to the live map, it's very, very interesting to see that we've had a county like this break for Beto O'Rourke.
Okay, so we're going to watch the map fill in, guys. We're going to head back to you in the newsroom. But as we get more of those colors filling in, especially as we see surprises, we'll be back here with you.
All right, very good. Thank you, Alona. We appreciate it. Now,
Fascinating numbers
out
of Fort Bend
really
County,
are. Yeah, so much more to come there. But Beto seems to be losing some of his ground that he had earlier. Let's get back to the governor's numbers that we looked at earlier. That race, by the way, Governor Greg Abbott, that has been called. 54% from the precincts reported, but clearly that race has already been called by ABC. Governor Greg Abbott, he will serve as governor for the next 4 years.
All right, well, joining us right now is Larry Payne, who is with Dialogue Houston. And Larry is a longtime Houston resident. You've certainly been around your share of elections over the years. But was this one that was particularly concerning to you? Because at points it got very, very dirty, but not in the classic sense of Texas politics.
I think civility is the issue going forward. We've had campaigns, we've had elections. Now it's about governance. And who is going to govern where we can bring the community together, where we can talk about humanity, where we can focus back on all tenets of what it means to be a citizen of democracy, not just the I and me, which is my individual rights and privileges. What about the we and us, our common duties, obligations, responsibilities to each other? That's where we need to focus. I think it's a classic time to talk about what is the fair, ethical treatment of all human beings. All human beings' lives matter. All human beings are equal. Whoever raises that dialogue and starts in earnest a discussion in this in-between time, this middle passage that we're in, as Dr. Kleinberg would say, demography is destiny. So in this in-between time, let's start the dialogue now about what does it mean as Houstonians treating each other and Texans treating each other as human beings and getting back on the civility road that we've gotten so far off the path on.
Well, Houston, a very diverse kind of city, and certainly Harris County as well. Any surprises here, especially as we look at Fort Bend County? It looks as though it's gone for O'Rourke at this point.
I think the changing demographics of the greater Houston area, including Fort Bend County, the most diverse county in America, tells us that we got to figure out how to live together. It is about this understanding of who we are as human beings. It's about getting back to what we talked about. It's an ethical question. I'm amazed that no one has raised the ethical questions involved in governing. It's campaigning and elections are campaigns and elections. It's after you win or lose. What's the governance? And how do you bring people together around that structure? We don't spend enough time just doing that anymore. We used to, as you and I both remember, and Art remembers too, there was a time in Houston when you could get a group together to talk about what is the policy change? What are the issues? How do we govern? How do we make sure the common good is looked after? And what does it mean searching for the common good for all of us?
All right.
We don't do that anymore.
Let's hope that's a conversation that starts
We're going to make sure it happens.
after tonight.
We'll still talk with you a little bit later on. Thank you, Larry. But let's get to the Ted Cruz campaign. We've been watching that, of course, very, very closely. You can see Mattress Mac, Jim McIngvale. He is up there speaking. This is, of course, in the Galleria area.
And
he's been speaking for the last little bit, sort of rousing up the crowd there, but he just left the stand, as you can clearly see.
We're beginning to see some of the courts coming in, some of the judges' races, but let's get back to this one.
This is an interesting race.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Both of them seeking to replace Ted Poe, who has decided to step down. Dan Crenshaw was thought to be a fairly worthy successor to him as a Republican, but Todd Litton coming up there. As you can see, though, it looks as though Crenshaw has this one pretty handily at this point.
At this point, he does, but remember, those were just early votes, as this is the early vote right here. We don't have any of the precincts reported on this one yet. But John Culberson and Lizzie Fletcher, these are early votes again. Generally, early votes will sway toward blue than red. That is generally the case, but early votes here, we don't know how many precincts have been reported there. Kevin Brady, that race has been called. Clearly, that's, with 2% reported, Kevin Brady clearly the winner there. Keeping his congressional seat. He's a power player in Washington.
Long time incumbent in that seat. But what's interesting is it doesn't look as though you have as much straight ticket voting as I think we expected.
Right.
Because each of these races appears to be a bit of a flip-flop. So we will continue to watch that pretty carefully.
Al Green, of course, clearly winning once again his congressional seat. That was expected. Not really much competition there. And here's another winner, Mike Siegel. 62% of the vote, this 2% reported, but clearly that is a win in
but
District 10.
The incumbent there, as I believe, was McCall.
Right.
And so it looks like he's getting
right.
beaten pretty badly at this point. Randy Weber, who was here on this set just a few minutes ago, clearly at this point way out in front, 19 points ahead of Adrian Bell.
See what other races we have here is 2% are reported. That is what is being reported at this point. Greg Abbott,
of course, going back to the governor's race, it has already been called.
Our next governor for the next 4 years.
I don't know if we have the lieutenant governor's numbers up just yet.
Oh, there they are right there.
There they are.
Now,
Dan
this
Patrick,
is too close to call at this point. Dan Patrick with 50%, Mike Collier, and then, of course, you have the other one at 2%. But this is with only 3% of the precincts reported. We have a long way to go there. And here you go for Attorney General.
Another neck-and-neck race, yeah. That for Attorney General. A lot of talk about the fact that he'd been indicted prior to that.
Right.
But at this point, as you can see, they are separated really just by a few thousand votes.
You know, Larry, quickly, this is a lot of these races had a lot of mudslinging and a lot of attack ads, and this was one of them, along with Fletcher and race as well.
It was very negative. We saw it toward the end of the campaign, how people got desperate. When you get desperate, you go negative.
Right.
And that's been kind of the way it's been.
Yeah.
And what happens in that race, I think, is that people realize that negativity doesn't work anymore. We want to talk about what are you going to do, not against anything or against your opponent, or what are you going to do, and specifically how are you going to govern going forward.
You know, as many had said, okay, there's going to be a blue wave in this midterm. Do you see that kind of falling apart?
Purple.
Maybe purple. Okay.
Blue is maybe
not as solid blue as
not
they
quite yet.
Okay.
Not quite yet. But it's coming. And I think that's the thing, we have to develop relationships built on mutual trust and about, because it's coming. So the thing we try to tell people, develop those relationships before you need them. Because in the heat of the battle and the discussion is not the time to say, I wish I knew so-and-so had a relationship. And nothing happens without trust. And one of the reasons you find this negativity and this great divide, we don't have those relationships built on mutual trust and respect. Therefore, nothing happens without trust.
All right.
Okay.
We are now getting the first Harris County numbers in, so we want to go back to the smart board, and Alona Carson and Keaton Fox, they're out there going through those numbers right now. We're finally getting them in.
And Ashley, just cue me. Oh, hi there. Sorry about that. Having a little trouble with the IFB there. I'm Keaton Fox. I'm our data producer here at ABC13. We just got a large chunk of early voting that just came in from Harris County. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to refresh this so we can take a look at this, and we'll go through some of the big races here. Here in Harris County, take a look at this. Beto O'Rourke, this is not a surprise, but is breaking over Ted Cruz 57-42. This is important because Beto has to have all the urban vote that he can get. You can see that he's doing that here. Harris County early votes. Dan Crenshaw ahead of Todd Litton by 53%. In the Culberson-Fletcher race, Fletcher out ahead 52-47. We'll skip by the governor, although Lupe Valdez does break there for the Harris County. Looking at Props A and Props B, this is important early vote. For Prop A, 70-25. Now, Prop B, this is the firefighter parity prop, 57-4, 42 against. They have to close that gap quickly if Prop B is not going to pass here in the city of Houston. We'll keep you posted here from the data desk, guys.
All right, very interesting numbers coming in. And of course, some of those polls we were talking about just closing within the half hour. And we don't know perhaps how many people are standing in line to still vote.
Taking a look at Ed Emmett and Lena Hidalgo. 49%, very tight race there for Harris County Judge. We're going to have much more here. We are following this, of course, very closely. Every number, every candidate throughout Texas area, and we will have it all for you as we continue to watch this right here, live on ABC13.com.
throughout the evening. And Governor Greg Abbott has won re-election. The Associated Press called the Texas gubernatorial race for Abbott over Democratic challenger Lupe Valdez.
And of course, we do have some early election results right now. And here's how the race stands between Democratic Congressman Beto O'Rourke and incumbent Republican Senator Ted Cruz. Now, they've been swapping the lead over the last hour, but there was a look at some of the early numbers coming in right there. It looks like at this point it's still a pretty close race. Mostly just for the numbers, these are all early voting. Take a look. 51% for Beto O'Rourke, 48% for Ted Cruz. And this is going to be a very close race that could go late into the night. Now, Texas did see a record early voting ballots for the midterms. Let's go to the gallery area with Tom Abrams with the Cruz campaign. Tom?
Well, they're paying close attention to these numbers, and of course, all of these large counties breaking for Beto O'Rourke is not necessarily a surprise to the people who've gathered here in the Galleria, but still, everything that has to break for Beto to this point, as we've been reporting, is. There's also been a lot of talk among political analysts about those who would have voted for the governor, Abbott, but then also voted for Beto O'Rourke. And it appears, at least in some of these urban counties, that certainly seems to be the case, given that the governor's race has already been called. The Cruz campaign waiting to see what happens in East Texas, West Texas, in these suburban areas and in the rural areas. That's where they're hoping to make up the biggest difference. Reporting live from the Galleria, Tom Abrams, 13 Eyewitness News.
Now, early numbers do have Beto in the lead. We want to check in right now with Ted Oberg in El Paso at the O'Rourke Watch Party. This is at a baseball stadium. Ted?
Yeah, you know what? This is finally an election party you can call a party. It is a party, and the early results are allowing the thousands of people already here to party. Let's peel back the onion a little bit. ABC News early exit polls show the electorate in Texas is the most diverse, the most non-white it has been since they started taking exit polls in '84, and they are breaking for O'Rourke by a nearly 40% margin. Among the non-white supporters of Beto O'Rourke, Julian Castro, the former mayor of San Antonio and a Democrat of national prominence, he is predicting a Beto win tonight.
I think he's going to win tonight, and it's going to be a new day in Texas politics. And it's Beto, if he wins, is going to be a fantastic U.S. senator. He's going to serve the people of Texas so much better than the current senator.
Beto O'Rourke himself obviously not here because there's an awful lot of returns yet to come in, and he wants to see how some of those break before he addresses this crowd. Live in El Paso, Ted Oberg, 13 Eyewitness News.
All right, Ted, lively crowd right there. Let's bring it back closer to home. Here's the race for Harris County Judge, of course, incumbent Ed Emmett right there in what looks to be a close race. Again, this is just the early vote coming in, but they're tied almost at 49% here. Just a few thousand votes separating them at this point. This could be a close race depending on where the later votes come in at this point.
We also have the first numbers for the city of Houston's Prop B, numbers for the votes cast in the part of Houston that sits in Fort Bend County. This measure would require the city to pay firefighters the same as police officers of similar rank. And you can see 58% of the votes coming in as a yes for Prop B. No is at 42%. Mayor Turner arguing that the city can't afford this measure, but Firefighters Association president saying that the city doesn't even know exactly how much it will cost. Right now, at least for this part of Fort Bend, it's looking like a yes on Prop B.
And let's give you a live picture as well of our newsroom. We've got our digital coverage picking up once again, so grab your phone and your tablet. You can watch us here at ABC13.com. There's our anchor, Gina Gaston, preparing for the next half hour. We'll be going on digital coverage all the way to 10 p.m.
We'll be right back on your TV in 30 minutes.
And welcome back to our continuing digital coverage. I'm Gina Gaston.
I'm Eric Barajas. Thanks for joining us tonight.
We're glad to be now joined by a new winner from the 18th Congressional District, or maybe a veteran winner, Sheila Jackson Lee. Just about 2 minutes ago, as you were sitting down here, we learned from AP that you officially won the way, so congratulations to you.
I'm delighted. AP has probably gotten a little ahead of it, but I'm glad to hear from them. I really am.
What are your thoughts about why you stay in this game so long? Why are you still out here working for people of Houston?
You know, someone asked me that question, and I like solving problems. And I like helping people solve their problems. And frankly, the people I represent, this nation, is full of good people, and I want to continue to emphasize the importance and value of serving good people and having the voices of good people heard. I hope that my votes evidence that the good people were really in this game, wanted a change, and wanted to keep those who were supporting change to really make a difference in this country and certainly in our community.
There has been a big story developing here in Harris County, 9 of the precincts having ballot problems, ballot machine boxes not working correctly. And we just learned tonight that, in fact, the people who got in line after 7, even though they're keeping them open until 8, that their ballots may only be provisional ballots. What are your thoughts about that? Because we have so many super tight races here in Texas.
Well, I started out early this morning seeing the pervasiveness of the ill effects of non-working machines. I went to polls throughout my district, and first site had 576 had 3 machines. Only one was working. And so this was a crisis that continued throughout the community, Harris County, in Republican areas and Democratic areas. And really, it's not the relevant question. It's a question about everyone having the right to vote. So I think the lawsuit was a valuable one. However, I call for the extension of the hours without restraints, without constraints, without limiting to provisional ballots. So I am not very happy, and I frankly think it's a voting rights violation. I think there will be lawsuits after the fact. I don't know when these elections will end. Many of these statewide elections are very close. Harris County is a very large district. I have heard that about 1.2 million votes were cast in early vote.
Congresswoman, we're going to keep you on standby right now. Mayor Sylvester Turner is coming to address people. We know he's been working hard for both these props here, for and against. Let's hear what the Mayor Turner has to say.
Appears to be passing handily. I'm very pleased with that. That is dedicating our revenues from Rebuild Houston for drainage, streets, and flooding. And as I've said over the last several months, that's a good thing. That's good for the city of Houston. So I'm very, very pleased with what appears as though Proposition A passing. That's a good thing.
How about Proposition B?
On Proposition B, it does appear that if the vote holds up, that Proposition B will pass. As I've indicated over the last several months, Proposition B, if the vote holds up, will add, at a minimum, another $100 million each year to the city's bottom line. That is a lot. And it is the financial mountain for the city, if the vote holds up, will have gotten considerably higher. It will be very, very challenging for Houston as a city, for all Houstonians. And as I've indicated over the last several months, it's very, very difficult to balance the city's books when you add another $100 million every year without significant reductions in personnel and disruption of city services. And if you go back to 2011, when Mayor Nice Parker was mayor, and she faced a $90 million shortfall and ended up laying off about 700 people, cut library hours and services, and the library has not yet fully recovered. Please bear in mind that this is $100 million that, if the vote holds up, that will be added on top of an expected budgetary shortfall already of more than $100 million. So you're talking about trying to balance the books when you're facing over $200 million. When you add Proposition B to the city's financial situation, What I will say to you is that we worked very, very hard to get on top of the city's pension challenges, rising costs every year. A lot of people expended a lot of time to reform the pension system. If this vote holds up, we find ourselves going right back to where we were turning the corner from. The other thing that people will have to bear in mind is that there's a lot of emotion in Proposition B. I know people love first responders and people love firefighters, but the request from a fiscal point of view was more than the city can afford, especially after Harvey. So, you know, the city's road has gotten a little tougher. I'm not going to try to sugarcoat it because I can't. One thing I do know numbers. And I will tell you, the city's road moving forward in the future from a financial point of view has just gotten a lot bumpier.
About how many job cuts are we talking about?
It's hard to say. One estimate was about 1,000 or more. But every aspect of city's operations will be impacted if this vote holds up. Some people were saying, you know, well, the mayor was exaggerating and all of it. No, I've never exaggerated on these numbers. If you add $100 million to the city's bottom line while we're under a revenue cap, there's not any room to maneuver without forcing reductions in personnel and a disruption of city services. There's not any room, especially when you put that on top of Hurricane Harvey and the city's financial obligations in recovering from Hurricane Harvey. So I know that there was a lot of emotion. I simply want to focus on the numbers, okay, and what that means to the people in the city of Houston. And now we all are going to have to work very, very hard to address the effects of this vote, assuming that it holds. You know, so.
Can you tell us about the item that's on the agenda that City Council will vote on tomorrow regarding the law firm and the proposition?
I think on any measure of this kind, like Proposition B, you certainly want the expertise on board to assess and review whatever options that the city may have. Look, we're not talking about a proposition that's going to cost the city $100,000 or $1 million or $10 million. Proposition B is going to cost the people in the city of Houston a minimum of $100 million each year. Not one time, but each year. And so the question will be, number one, what does it fully mean? Because I know you all have been saying parity. But quite frankly, you all have gotten it wrong too. There is no parity in Proposition B. It's not parity. It is not saying that police officers and firefighters are going to be the same in hours, training, promotional requirements. That's parity. Proposition B, it sounded good. You know, many of you all repeated it, but it's not parity. It's not.
How much would the raise be for firefighters if Proposition B does pass?
And as I've said over the last several months, Proposition B, if it passes, will mandate a pay raise to the firefighters of 29% in the first year and 32% in the second year. And again, you know, do we value our firefighters? Absolutely. Do we love them? Do we appreciate them? Do we respect their service? Absolutely. But if the request is one that will hurt the entire city, it is an ask that is not in the city's best interest. No matter how we love any group, the Proposition B, it's very, very costly. It is going to be very costly to this city, you know? So we all are going to have to come together. because it's just like anything. If the vote holds up, it does add an additional $100 million to the city's bottom line. And it is just on pay raises, not on the fire trucks, not on the boots, the clothing, the equipment, just on pay raises. Okay? So where do we get the money to do all of the other things? And then where do we get the money to pay for police, for the municipal services, for parks, for libraries? Where does all of that money come from? And where do we get the money for the local match for from Hurricane Harvey? Where do we get that from? Now, I fully understand the emotional appeal. It was a very strong one. I got that. I got that. But at the same time, there are no freebies.
And you mentioned the options that you're going to review starting tomorrow. What options are we talking about? What's on the table if you were to look at this?
I have said from over the last several months to you all individually and collectively that if Proposition B passes, there will be reductions and a disruption of services. I've said that several times. Nothing has changed. My position hasn't changed. I wasn't just bluffing or being a demagogue. I said that several times. And I say to you now that every vote has been cast and votes are starting to, being counted, Mayor, has your position changed, or would you like to lessen what you have said in the past? No. No. Because the numbers speak for themselves. Okay? I said there will be reductions. I said there will be disruption of services. And I'm saying that to you now that every vote is cast. I'm saying that to you now. And the reality is, there is no one group that's going to be immune. This vote was not even in the best interest of my firefighters. It wasn't in the best interest of the 4,000 firefighters.
All right, hello everybody. You've been listening to that press conference there from the mayor. He was happy about Prop A, not too happy about Prop B there. You heard him giving that long speech about how this is going to cost the city a lot of money. We'll see what happens. Let these votes play out as well. But we've also got some very interesting races popping up in Harris County. In particular, the race for Harris County Judge, which is a virtual tie almost right now. We have Wendy Coffin with Community Impact Newspaper. Tell us about this. This is County Judge Ed Emmett versus Lena Hidalgo. And a lot of people didn't even know who she was up until this race.
That's right. It's really close right now. Obviously, we've got only early voting numbers in so far, but early voting numbers in Harris County have been historically high. We've got over 850,000 votes for just early voting.
What are you seeing on the numbers right now?
So right now we're seeing a really tight race. Emmett's leading by about 2 points so far. So that's really not to be expected. Emmett is obviously our incumbent. He's been in office since about 2007. So this was really unexpected for it to be that close.
It was. He got us through Harvey and a bunch of other things. Why do you think this race is so close at this point?
So we're seeing a lot of numbers coming in that a lot of people are voting straight ticket Democrat, which could probably account for a lot of that. We're seeing about 53% in Harris County were straight ticket Democrat voters.
Okay. Any other interesting races you're seeing here in Harris County?
So we also have Harris County Precinct 2 Commissioner. So we have Jack Mormon, the incumbent, running against Adrian Garcia, and you'll probably recognize Adrian Garcia as the former Harris County Sheriff. So we've got about a 2-point difference between that with Mormon leading. It's a lot of close races, and it's really very interesting.
Okay, well, Garcia has some name recognition here in Harris County. All right, that's Wendy Coffin here with Community Impact Newspapers. Let's go back to Gina right now from our blogger table.
Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee. And we want to take a look at the Beto Cruz race, the big, some people are saying $100+ million spent on this race. Everyone's watching, and I was trying to see if we can get the latest numbers, but I know all night long it's been back and forth and oh so close. Surprised by this? Most polls said 7 points up for Cruz.
I think what you're seeing is a magnificent surge of new voters energized voters, people who maybe skipped an election or two and came out to vote this time, either re-registered and were able to vote this time.
And there's the numbers right there.
Here are the numbers.
That's with 7% reporting. And by the way, one of the big developments was that Beto has taken Fort Bend County.
I think it's also the style of campaigning. I watched Beto O'Rourke campaign. He started a long time ago, but he left no stone unturned. People loved that he came to touch them. I was in East Texas. They said he had been to East Texas from Marshall to Tyler 24 times.
Wow.
So it's a whole new style. It's setting a whole new bar. And it really is saying to people, I'm here to listen to you, which is what Beto's message is. I'm here to listen, and I'll be your representative in the United States Senate. I'm going to watch this because one of the things that he also said, which we've had some difficulty with that, he wanted everyone to vote for him. Everyone had an open door. I say the same thing. And I think if we can stop defining each other and people listen to our views, as Beto over and over again talked about a better life in terms of education and health care, people started listening. And he talked more about what he wanted to do for the voters as opposed to saying things against the opponent. And I think that is a very strong factor in what people wanted to see in the future, because we're tired of divisive talk. We're tired of people calling names. And I think that was the evidence by way of where he is in the votes tonight. It's going to be very, very close. And I think the same thing is going to happen in the Congress. Whoever wins, whoever takes the House and maybe the Senate, if Democrats can take the Senate, they're going to be looking for people that are doing the job and ceasing the name calling, because we can see the evidence of divisive talk that is generated in the actions of tragedy that occurred just a few weeks ago, a few days ago, that we're still mourning. So I think people are looking for that change.
Okay. All right, well, he has definitely brought change. He's galvanized a young vote, and he was really not known until this campaign, and then Twitter named him his most tweeted politician last week. So he's got a following now. Congresswoman, thank you very much for your insights.
Appreciate your
We're
time
excited about this election.
And
thank all the voters for
congratulations
voting.
again on your
Thank you.
election.
Thank you.
Of course, the numbers continue to come in, and we continue to do analysis on the numbers coming in. Let's go to Alona back at our smart board tonight.
And guys, we are keeping an eye on what's coming in, because these numbers are starting to add up and starting to show a little bit more of a picture, as Keaton jumps in here with me, our numbers guru, to talk about the fact that this is still right there.
Well, and Alono, as we've been watching these numbers come in, this is a live feed of data that we have coming in, we have seen this thing flip back and forth and back and forth. You can see that right now the difference is about 50,000 votes. But one of the big problems here, as we've been watching our big board fill in, is Harris County. Harris County is only about, 16% in right now, with a difference that's large. Beto O'Rourke has got to get this number up. It has to be, in my opinion, above 60% to do very, very well. However, we're still only at 16%. So, quick math, if he's only behind by 50,000 votes, and Harris County with perhaps 1 million, 2 million votes, we are still waiting for this number to come in, and that could put him over the top. Now, saying that, there's still a lot of counties that haven't come in yet.
A lot of white. Everywhere we see these white spots, guys, we are still waiting for those numbers to come in. You are seeing Harris County as blue, but again, as Keaton said, only 16% of the vote, and this is such an important county for Beto, so we would need to see that number get much bigger.
We also talked about this. Dallas County is showing huge numbers for Beto O'Rourke as well, as we've talked about all night long. Beto has to win the urban centers. If he doesn't, it's over. He has about 6 pathways to win here, but if he doesn't get all 6, then he loses. Whereas Ted Cruz sort of just has to get the folks out, not only in the rural base, but then pick up a few votes here and there. So this is important, this is important, this is important. That's, of course, Dallas, Tarrant, Fort Bend counties.
Right, and the Fort Bend was our big surprise so far of the evening. So as these continue to fill in, we'll continue to watch those numbers. But like Keaton said, this has been going back and forth all throughout the evening
now
here,
it's changed once again. So now we're about a 75,000 vote difference
Yep.
with 75% in, with Cruz on top right now.
Okay, 75% in, so these numbers are adding up. But again, that Harris County number is a really important one for the whole state. So when we get more on that, we will be back with you guys.
Okay. All right, guys, we appreciate those numbers coming in right now. Let's go back out to Eyewitness News anchor Tom Abrams. He's here in Houston at the Ted Cruz campaign headquarters. Tom, we've seen some more numbers come in, so what's the mood like there?
So Jeff Rowe, who ran Ted Cruz's presidential campaign in 2016, is running his campaign now. He just came out and addressed the crowd, said they still feel very good about this. There is the chance it could be a very long night, but they also think that the higher percentage of early vote that gets counted early, and then these rural areas begin to come in, they'll feel better and better. They thought it would be about 50-50 from the early vote, and then they think that the lead will expand as those rural counties come in and the ones that didn't have very big early numbers. But again, they're still cautiously optimistic, and as you mentioned, Beto O'Rourke performing as expected and very well in these urban cores.
All right, Tom Abrams there live. Yes, so they're still holding out hope. Think they can pull into the lead here at some point. Tom Abrams there live at Ted Cruz's headquarters.
Yeah, I mean, this race is so tight and so much money and so much work has gone into this. We want to check in with the other campaign, the Beto O'Rourke campaign. We got Ted Oberg on that assignment.
Yeah, hey guys, this certainly, the environment here, very lively. They are very excited by what they see so far. In addition to what all that Keaton was talking about there, and by the way, he is doing a dynamite job with those numbers, is the border counties going big for Beto O'Rourke as well. They certainly feel very optimistic here. They are waiting, as everyone across the state is, to see what more comes in and how close it gets. Earlier in the day, a colleague here said, "How does Texas do a recount?" And I laughed, because it has been decades since something has been that close in Texas on the statewide level to even consider it. But boy, as you look at these numbers now, flip-flopping all evening, it certainly becomes more and more of a possibility. Guys, back to you.
All right, Ted Oberg there live in El Paso. You see that band getting on the stage there. So both camps still holding out hope between Cruz and O'Rourke, and the numbers are very close right now.
And it's going to probably be a long night for everybody this evening. They're the latest numbers we have in right now. This one shows O'Rourke with 50%, Ted Cruz is 49%. A disparity from the numbers that Alona and Keaton just brought you because of the number of precincts reporting. But yes, it's going to be a long evening. And then you got those provisional ballots, Eric. We don't know how many hundreds or maybe even thousands of people whose ballots won't be counted until after a legal challenge to see if those votes count as well.
Yes, but you haven't seen a Republican incumbent senator challenged this way in a long time here in Texas.
No,
well, thank you for being with us at this point right now for our midterm 2018 election coverage. We continue our coverage after a short break right now.
Democrat, looks like Senate pickups for Republicans. How does President Trump talk about this night?
Well, I think he will speak the way he usually speaks about things, which is giving credit to himself. But in this case, I actually think it's very much important for him to do that. When you look at those special elections and off-year elections that we saw in the past couple of years, they were mostly devastating for Republicans, and President Trump had very low approval, high disapproval. I think people thought that coming into midterms it was going to be a bloodbath, that President Trump would have to hide behind his desk, never being out on the campaign trail. It turns out that he has been the #1 asset for keeping the Senate, and that is huge. He's a huge draw. He motivates Republican voters, and it's also just the agenda that he's put forward. The economy being so good, the deregulation that has done so much to jumpstart the economy. These are reasons why Republicans are not facing what I think most people thought they were going to face, which was utter annihilation tonight.
Jessica, when you look at Heidi Heitkamp, Chris Van Hollen, he said recently, that the last race she won, she was down by 10 points, and she's a great closer, and she's able to do that. So is this potentially an example? We were talking about Democrats picking some very good candidates in the House. Carl's description of Kevin Cramer and the economic boom that he's helped to bring to North Dakota, is this a situation where it was a good candidate?
It looks like it. Excuse me, we'll wait to see how this pans out. I don't think Heidi Heitkamp is going to close this gap, and I do agree with the analysis that when she voted against Brett Kavanaugh, she saw the writing on the wall. I also think that that's just how she felt, and her mother is a survivor of sexual assault, and she felt very strongly about these issues. But I'm really interested to see the Trump effect, what goes on with Josh Hawley, someone that he campaigned for a couple times. Obviously, Garland is exciting for him.
No, because Mike Robb is speaking of the winner in Indiana. Let's take a listen.
Friends with losers, the way a campaign like this should be. And I want to thank
On right now is the race for Harris County Judge. It is surprisingly neck and neck right now between longtime Judge Ed Emmett and his Democratic challenger, a relatively unknown 27-year-old Lena Hidalgo. And as you're looking at the numbers there, you can see just how tight it is. At this point, Judge Emmett having, just about 6,000, maybe 7,000 votes ahead of Lena Hidalgo.
Very tight there.
And the other high-profile race everybody is watching, not just here in Texas, but all around the nation, the Texas Showdown for U.S. Senate.
Taking a look at the numbers, Ted Cruz at this point, and this is with about 13% of the precincts reported, just a very, very tight lead there over Beto O'Rourke. That has been going back and forth, those numbers, those percentages over the past hour or so, but clearly a tight race, which is going to take a while until that one is actually called.
Yeah, at one point they'd expected him to be ahead by about seven
Right.
points, and at this point, much, much closer.
All right, well, let's take a live look now at some of those watch parties for both candidates here in Houston and El Paso regarding the Cruz watch party, which is in the Galleria area. And they're on the other side of the state, El Paso. That is their O'Rourke watch party with a band going, having a lot of fun out there.
Yeah, at this point, both sides not really sure whether they should be partying or not as they continue to watch the numbers. But we will have live reports coming up shortly from our own Tom Abrams and Ted Oberg, both online and, of course, on Eyewitness News at 10 o'clock as you look at those live pictures there. And now we want to take a look at the two City of Houston propositions that were on the ballot.
All right, first up, let's get to Proposition A. This is the Rebuild Houston program, which includes a drainage fee added onto your water bill. That has clearly passed 74%, 260,000 votes against 91. And then now let's take a look at the other city propositions here, especially this one. This is a big one.
Proposition B, which was a proposal which seeks to give firefighters pay which matches that of police officers of equal ranks, something Mayor Sylvester Turner says the city simply cannot afford. But as you can see, it passed nonetheless.
We are going to have, of course, much more right here on ABC13.com and online, and back to ABC.
All right, welcome back, everyone, to our online coverage here on ABC13.com. Of course, we're keeping track of all the key races here. Everybody keeping an eye on everything that's going on. Of course, we're keeping track of it as well.
That's right. It's just as 9 o'clock here tonight, and those results are still coming in. We want to take a look right now. This is a very close race right here.
Very close, exactly.
Ted Cruz bringing in 50% of the vote. Beto O'Rourke, 49%. Of course, a lot of folks watching that has been like an ongoing just a change, back and forth. All right, let's move on to the next one, see what's happening here. U.S. Representative District 2 there. Dan Crenshaw, 53% of the vote right there. Meanwhile, Todd's bringing in 46%. A lot of folks have been also watching this race as well. This is another hot
Yeah,
race.
and this is U.S. Representative District 7. You can see Lizzie Fletcher there. She's getting 52% of the votes. Also sort of very close to John Culberson there, the incumbent.
Yeah, a lot of folks looking at this race, and these are the important races that I think the entire country they're watching, because the big question is it going to flip? You know, is it going to be the red wave or the blue wave? Let's check out the next. This is Representative District 8. Kevin Brady there taking that win right there by a large number there, reporting 70% of the vote there.
Yeah, 74% there. And the next race that we're looking at here, this is for District 22. As you can see, Pete Olson, the Republican there, getting 52% of the votes, and the Democratic Preston getting about 46%. So it's also very close here as well.
All right, governor, of course, that was called, I think someone called it a few minutes ago. Greg Abbott there, 55%. The Republican governor there taking back his seat. Meanwhile, Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick, just by 2% there. The Republican incumbent there, Dan Patrick, over Mike Collier right now. And this is as of 9:02 here. 11% of the precincts reporting. Ken Paxton, Attorney General, 50% right now. Justin Nelson right behind him at 2%. Of course, a lot of folks watching that race as well. That is with 11% of the precincts reported. And this is a very close race.
Numbers. Yeah, so Harris County Judge Ed Emmett, Republican, they're getting 49% of the votes, and Lina Hidalgo, she's getting 49% as well, but Ed Emmett, he is up just by a small margin, so this one is very close as well.
And I was just talking to folks online about that one. You know, no one even knew who Lina was, you know, until now. She's young. Yeah, so a lot of folks watching that one as well. Harris County District Clerk, we're being told that count is down. I think that's what she said. The incumbent right there, Chris Daniel, is down 46%. We know we had Chris
on
just
here at
earlier,
7 o'clock.
And he was just talking about how his seat, and of course a lot of the other smaller races in Harris County are very important. They're not the big ones.
Definitely. And the incumbent for this Harris County Clerk as well is down.
That's right.
So as you can see there, 54% to 44%. So that's a pretty big margin from the other races that we have been seeing that are very close. This one slightly apart, just a tad bit.
Right, and we've been a lot of folks talking about this one too online. I know it's in Proposition A, the Fort Bend ISD. 74% you see there saying yes, 26% saying no.
Huge difference.
Very huge difference right there. Let's move on to the next one. And we have some guests here. And you guys can kind of chime in on this as we.
Go ahead. We see you guys nodding heads and agreeing. So you guys are obviously.
And I want to
have things to say about this.
I mean, it's obvious the flip flops. We've been seeing all of this all night. We're going to start with you. I mean, what do you think? And I'll let you introduce.
So you're with Latin Women's Initiative, and of course, one of the races that I really want to talk about is District 29.
Sure.
So Sylvia Garcia, she took that seat from Jane Green. He obviously was endorsing her. What are you thinking about District 29? Obviously, it's predominantly Hispanic.
It is, and I think it was projected to go for Senator, soon-to-be Congresswoman Garcia to begin with, but I think it is very historic to see not just Senator Garcia, but also in El Paso. That race, I think, has been called as well for Judge Escobar. So we will be sending 2 Latinas from Texas to Congress. I think that's really incredible. Yes, certainly
really
a night of first for the Latina community.
Got you. And talking to Franz Brodson right quick, Rice U, Democrats there. How are you feeling? What do you think about seeing all of this flip-flops? That a lot of Democrats out there should be happy at this hour.
Oh yeah, absolutely. This is a great night for Texas Democrats. You can say win or lose at the end of the day with Beto. It's incredibly close.
Yeah.
If 1 year ago I told you that the margin would be 49-49 at whatever time it is, I don't even know anymore.
9:05.
9:05 on election night for Texas Senator, you'd say I'm crazy.
Right? Yeah, that's insane.
That is a testament to just the energy that exists around not just Beto's campaign, but around Democratic policies in Texas. This state's changing.
It is.
And people are going to start coming to terms with it as results like this continue to come in and become the norm in Texas politics.
And speaking of changing, we also wanted to go to the studio now. They're standing by at the smart board. We're talking about straight ticket voting and how it greatly impacted this midterm election. Let's head to the studio.
Okay, guys, we are here taking a look at that because we are seeing some very large percentages of the straight ticket. Keaton, the numbers guy here, we really picked up on that, and it might be explaining some of what we are seeing in some of these surprise results.
Absolutely, because let's be honest, Alona, when people look at 18 pages,
18 pages.
My ballot was 18 pages. They say, I got to get to work. And they just hit straight party voting and get down. So when we look at all of the voting that came in straight party, Democratic parties, you can see by and large well ahead of how many straight party votes that were actually out there. So now as we look at some of the other races, Senator's not a surprise. But as I jump down here, as we look at like for the Culberson race, that one's tight. But we were looking at the Ed Emmett race here. It's so tight, and that could very likely be because of the straight party voting.
Yeah, and because we were seeing maybe up to 70% of people just deciding to go all one party or the other.
Absolutely.
So really quickly, we were seeing the results of that. Now, let's check in with our big maps because we have a couple of other things we want to hit on. First of all, our latest, as we take a look nationwide, balance of power is the big topic nationwide, and I guess that some of this is already being called.
Right, so what you're looking at, this is every House district across the entire country. What we know right now is plus 10 for the Democrats. You need 218 to be in the balance of power, but we know that a lot of media folks are already calling this for the Democrats, and we'll keep an eye on that.
Yeah, and anytime you see these little stripes, I know it's probably difficult for you to see on our map, but when we see these little stripes, these are all flipped.
Those are flips, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
We have Governor Abbott we're going to take a listen to.
Yeah, let's listen in.
Thank you for your trust. Know this, I will never stop fighting for you and your families as we continue to make Texas the premier state in America. Moments ago, I received a phone call from Sheriff Lupe Valdez, sending on her congratulations about the victory, and I thanked her. But also, I told her what I want to tell all Texans, and that is whether or not you voted for me or against me or didn't vote at all, I'm going to go to work every single day working for everybody in this great state. Now, we all know that this past year has been filled with campaigns that have battled under different banners. It's been the red team versus the blue team. Well, now that elections are over and the people have spoken, it is time for all of us to unite under the best banner of them all, and that is the great flag of the Lone Star State, the Texas flag. Listen, the reality is all Texans share a common vision. We expect Texas to be exceptional, and we will make sure it remains exceptional. It's time for us to work toward that shared vision of a brighter future for Texas and put behind us the differences of the campaigns. As Texans, the bonds that we share transcend our differences. Listen, we all want safer communities. We all want more jobs. We all want better schools. And we all want to give our children lives worthy of the promise. These priorities are bigger than any political party because, first and foremost, we are Texans. Listen, Texas is the land of opportunity. I'm living proof that we live in a state where a young man's life can be broken in half and yet still rise up and be governor of this incredible state. As governor, I will continue to ensure that that very brand of opportunity will remain true for generations to come. Now, I want to thank so many people for their hard work in making tonight possible. I want to thank my brother Gary and his wife Denise. I know Gary is here somewhere. Gary is right over here. Gary Abbott. Gary is a 20-year veteran of the United States Navy. Thank you for your service to our country. He has helped me connect with other veterans across the state and emphasize the importance that we do more to help the men and women who've worn the uniform, because we understand one thing. We would not be participating in this democratic process if it were not for those who fought and died wearing the uniform of the mightiest military in the history of the world. I also want to thank members of my wife's family, many of whom are with us today. If you're a part of my wife's family, mi familia, raise your hand and let's hear it. And as you all know, we need to give our special gratitude to the most famous mother-in-law in Texas. Now, thanks also to the best campaign in the history of Texas politics. And to the best field staff and volunteers.
All right, that was the governor you heard there. They've called that race. He was doing his speech there. All right, got some breaking news for you. ABC News, we are right now calling Senator Ted Cruz the winner of that race. Of course, he was elected to his first term years ago, 19.5% approval rating, but they are calling ABC right now. They're calling this race, saying that Ted Cruz is the winner of this race. You see there, 50%. We do have Tom Abrams, who is out there at the Galleria at Ted Cruz's campaign. Tom, what are they saying now? ABC, we're calling him right now the winner. What are you hearing out there at the Galleria?
I don't think anybody knows it yet, Chauncey. I've been communicating with his campaign. I think we were aware that some ABC modeling was showing that Cruz looked to be the winner tonight, despite some of those early numbers. But people here in this room don't know what we're reporting right now, which is that ABC is projecting Ted Cruz to be the winner for re-election here over Beto O'Rourke. As you know, Cruz won by 16 points 6 years ago. He was an insurgent candidate, had virtually no name recognition. When he started, just 2% of Texans even knew who he was. In 2016 when he was, 6 years ago when he was campaigning in 2012. He essentially did what Beto O'Rourke has done this time, and that is hit all over the state, meeting with groups large and small, building that name recognition and his reputation as a constitutional conservative. He won big over then Lieutenant Governor David Dewhurst in the primary, then beat Paul Sadler in the general election, and has spent the last 6 years in the Senate. Did not necessarily expect it to be this close this time around, but Beto O'Rourke raised a lot of money in the state of Texas and outside the state of Texas. He's become a national political folk hero, and so this race is still very close, but ABC comfortable with his projections that Ted Cruz will be the winner tonight. His campaign telling me that despite some of these large counties coming in for Beto O'Rourke early, they felt as though everything was still on track based on what they thought would happen throughout the night. His campaign manager came out here earlier tonight saying that they still felt good about things, but that Senator Cruz would not come down here until they knew for sure that he was the winner. They're doing their own modeling, I'm told. They're not relying on the networks necessarily to call the race, but they have felt very confident these last couple of weeks. Internal polling from sources outside the campaign who had knowledge of the internal polling just a few days ago suggested that he might win by as many as 5 points. Aggregate polling around the country has shown a 6 to 7 point win. We still don't know what the final numbers will be here tonight, but again, ABC News projecting that Ted Cruz would win. Now, I will tell you that more of the people coming from the backside of the ballroom, where all the food was and the drinks, are now coming here to the front of the room, closer to the stage, perhaps expecting that Senator Cruz will be speaking shortly. We were told we'd get a half-hour heads up. We've not yet gotten that heads up, but we also knew that he would be not speaking until after Governor Abbott had spoken. Governor Abbott has, as you know, since spoken. So that's the latest here. There may be some news filtering throughout. I mean, I can sense the energy here that maybe people are expectant at this point. But again, no large uproar yet, and no decision, as far as we know, here in the room has been announced. And so you're not seeing people jumping up and down just yet. But again, they felt confident going into tonight, especially based on the last couple of weeks, the way they approached Republican voters. Ted Cruz telling us several times as we traveled the state with him that this was a turnout election. The big key for them in a state like Texas, which has historically, over the last 20 years, had more Republicans than Democrats, that they just needed to turn out those Democrats. And they felt even with a large percentage of new voters, some of whom would vote Republican, and even some traditional conservative Republicans who fell on the moderate side, who might go to Beto O'Rourke, they still had a big enough window to win this race. Of course, we'll keep you updated, Chauncey, as we hear more from the Cruz campaign and have more information from them as to when the senator will speak. But again, as you said, ABC News projecting Ted Cruz to win re-election over Beto O'Rourke.
Right, and you talk about that window, Tom. Cruz did take advantage of that. Once again, ABC News projecting Ted Cruz the winner, and he's headed back to the White House. He's headed back to the Senate. Once again, we're still waiting on Cruz and his people to address that. So far, they haven't. Only ABC News right now projecting that he did win the race. Now, we have been talking to Ted Oberg. He is out in El Paso tonight. He is with Beto O'Rourke and his campaign. We want to talk to him. I don't even know if you know Ted Oberg, but ABC News has called Ted Cruz the winner of this race. Have you heard that? What's it like there with Beto's people? Are they talking about this projection?
No, Chauncey. Yes, I have heard it, but the crowd certainly has not. There are thousands of people here at this baseball stadium in El Paso, and as the word sort of sprinkled across reporters' iPhones and so forth, these projections were being made, there was no noticeable outcry from the crowd. In fact, they are listening to this band in Spanish just behind me, and just seconds before you came to me, a spontaneous Beto crowd broke out. So no one is screaming for the exits here. No one has decided that this race is over, and I'm not certain that they're necessarily willing to believe it quite yet. The race still very close, and while nothing short of a victory that would send Beto to the United States Senate would necessarily be happy for this, would be happy news for this crowd, if it holds where it is or even close, it would be the best that a Democrat has done in Texas since 1998, and that's an awfully long time ago. What Beto has done, according to people here, and you've heard this all along, is sort of congeal a new coalition of voters across Texas. Exit polls from ABC did show that there were a lot of new voters, that this was the most diverse electorate in Texas in a very long time, that independents had broke for Beto. But as Tom Abrams pointed out so expertly, this is a turnout election, and the question is, could Beto get his supporters, those young people, those maybe not all the time voters, to the polls? And it would appear, if this projection holds, that that is not the case. But as I say, no one has left for the exits. The entire lower bowl of this stadium, I don't know if you can see it, is full of people. The entire infield of this baseball stadium is full of people. And if there's any indication of how long this party might go, we heard 5 bands warm up, do sound checks before it got dark. We're still on band number 1. This crowd has a lot to party for, and it could go on for several more hours, despite the fact that this projection's already been made.
You're one of our bloggers here, Angela, and obviously the ABC News is projecting the Republicans to keep the House, obviously. And I want to talk to you about the female Republican voters. What is this saying? I know in 2016 it was a little different than now.
Well, so far they're saying Democrats are going to keep the House, but still fingers crossed. I think that females are really tired of being pigeonholed in certain boxes. They're tired of being said, well, you must want abortion. A lot of us are very pro-life. They're saying, well, you must want open borders. Actually, we don't want open borders. And I think that, we're talking about the Beto and the Ted Cruz thing, and also the Lizzie Fletcher race. Lizzie Fletcher got $2 million from Nancy Pelosi's PAC. Beto O'Rourke got $80 million from Hollywood liberals. They're trying to turn Texas, California. And so far, it's not going to happen. I do agree that changing demographics, people say, oh, we have to go further left. No, conservatism, the conservative message of low taxes, a secure border, national pride, America first, these things resonate with every voter. You see the Blexit movement, the black exiting from Democratic Party. Now we're talking about the Lexit movement with Latinos exiting the Democrat Party. And of course, women voters cannot be pigeonholed. It's a very interesting night.
All right, and I stand corrected. Republicans keeping the Senate. Thank you for that. So we're going to toss it over to Chauncey with our panelists.
The headline here, Republicans keeping the Senate, and Senator Ted Cruz, they're keeping his seat. Your reaction to that, just really quick in 15 seconds or less.
Sure, I think that this is not a great surprise. Ted Cruz has mastered how to win statewide elections in Texas, but Beto O'Rourke is going to echo for years to come.
Right, and we go back to 2012 really quick. You know, when Ted Cruz came, he was running for an open seat. He won by 15.8%. Tonight was a completely different story, very close to Beto O'Rourke.
Yeah, a very narrow margin. And the story after the numbers come in will be what happened in Fort Bend County, because Fort Bend County was a sweep. Democrats would also in Harris County. So you're going to see across the state, 14 state house races Democrats are going to win. So there's going to be difference in the state legislature. There's going to be difference in the county across this state. So Texas is no longer this bright red state. It is becoming a purple state, and the numbers tonight show it.
Gotcha. And then we will be tracking those numbers throughout the night here. Of course, we're waiting on 10 o'clock, ABC 13. We will be on the broadcast side. We're going to be back here live streaming on ABC13.com at the top of the hour. But for now, we'll send it back to you guys.
That the Republicans have taken seats in North Dakota, Indiana, and Texas, which are very red states. So, yes, it's a victory for Donald Trump, but I think it's a tremendous overstatement to say that that Donald Trump pulled a hat out of the bag. This is something he should have been expected to do. He did it. Congratulations to him. But let's temper our excitement over Donald Trump's performance tonight.
Sure. He went to 11 cities in 8 states, made the closing campaign, fired up only places that he won in the 2016 election. But Britt, $5.2 billion spent in this election, more than that.
And Democrats in staggering turnout. I mean, one estimate earlier said that the turnout with the vote not even anywhere near complete in Texas since past 2014 total.
Let alone all the coverage. I mean, there's never been a candidate I
never saw so much intense coverage of a midterm, ever. This was record-breaking in that department. Look, I think Chris has got a point. But remember, it wasn't so long ago that the predictions were almost universal that we're going to have a blue wave. And that the Republicans, despite the map that's so much in their favor, might even lose the Senate. And the fact that they've had these pickups is a sign, at least, that his campaign didn't hurt these candidates. It's important that he was the central issue in some ways.
I guess what in terms of the House, we don't know what the margin is going to be. We don't know where Republican seats are going to flip to Democratic seats.
It's a race that was watched throughout the country. We have Ted Cruz getting 51% of the vote compared to Beto O'Rourke's 49%. Now, this is with 23% of the precincts reporting, so they have access to more information than we're showing right here. And some of this is also based on forecast of the districts that haven't turned over their numbers, but that they can forecast based on their past voting patterns.
Doesn't it just seem so close to call at this point, but we'll just think they know what they're doing, right? So let's go now with this information on Ted Cruz out to Tom Abrams. He's at Cruz's watch party headquarters here in the Galleria area. Tom, what's the latest?
Sure. So word of the race being called in favor of Ted Cruz has begun to filter through the crowd here. They're now awaiting the senator to come out and speak and thank his supporters for winning re-election. And we can tell you that sources both inside and outside of the campaign have been telling us all night that early on they expected it would be very close. They might even be behind, but as those rural counties began to come in and be counted, that the lead for Ted Cruz would widen. What the final margin will be tonight, we still don't know, but multiple sources now confirming that Ted Cruz, projecting that Ted Cruz will win re-election here in Texas. And of course, one of the television monitors here reporting that just a few moments ago with graphics, which is why you hear the crowd cheering. Of course, we'll get a heads up before the senator comes down here to speak and thank his supporters tonight. and we'll see you when he does. Reporting live for now from the Galleria area at the Ted Cruz campaign headquarters, Tom Abrams, 13 Eyewitness News.
All right, Tom, thank you. And then there was the long shot but heavily funded opponent to Ted Cruz, and that's Beto O'Rourke. His campaign really putting up a fight.
Here's Ted Oberg out in El Paso with his headquarter watch party. Ted?
Yeah, guys, still absolutely a party. As Tom said, all of those graphics popping up on big screens at Ted Cruz's party, they haven't popped up at all on the big screen here. This crowd likely watching their phones to know that this race has been called, but they are certainly not streaming for the exits, and there is no evidence that Congressman O'Rourke is planning to come to that stage anytime soon. ABC News out with some interesting exit poll information showing that men decisively voted by 15 points, white men, for Ted Cruz, and that suburban educated women were awash in this race, likely one of the reasons that it went towards Ted Cruz tonight. As for the crowd, they are still dancing, still enjoying the first of what's expected to be 5 bands here in El Paso. It could be a long night, but in the end, likely not a happy one for this giant crowd here. Live in El Paso, Ted Oberg, 13 Eyewitness News.
All right, Ted, thank you. Well, we're also watching a really close race for Harris County judge.
It is neck and neck. Longtime Judge Ed Emmett and his Democratic challenger, relative unknown, 27-year-old Lina Hidalgo right here. And take a look at these numbers. This is extremely close, both at 49% right there. Very close race.
Yeah, surprise there in that race. A lot of straight ticket voting there that helped the opponent to Ed Emmett. And now we're looking at the U.S. House race between incumbent Republican John Culberson and Democratic challenger Lizzie Fletcher. You can see right now that Fletcher leads in this one, 52 to 48%.
And with we have some more numbers for you as well. Here's a look at the race between Dan Crenshaw and Todd Litton right here. They are vying for a seat in Texas's 2nd House District. Looks like Republican Dan Crenshaw has the edge over Todd Litton right now, with just about 18% of precincts reporting right now.
So remember, we are covering you this election throughout the night live on ABC13.com. Also, if you have your news app handy, you can stay abreast of what's going on there as well. And we'll be back again at 10.
That's right. We'll see you at 10 p.m.
Welcome back, everyone, to continuing coverage here as we continue to follow this election night on midterm elections. Some terrific races, great results, depending on which side you're on.
Yeah, exactly.
But some might call it disappointing, but it's been an interesting night.
Well, let's go straight to the race that everybody has been talking about, not just in Texas, but around the country, and that is Ted Cruz versus Beto O'Rourke, one of the largest amount of funds raised ever in the history of this state. At this point, it looks as though Cruz is at least 3 percentage points ahead of Beto O'Rourke.
Yeah, and Ted Cruz, in fact, has been called by ABC News to go ahead and win that race. He will hold on to his Senate seat. Now, this is a Congressman, John Culberson and Lizzie Fletcher, 52%. I don't know that this race has been called, or has it? Perhaps it has by ABC. I'm not sure. But certainly a race that everyone has been watching closely, because Ted Poe, of course, was the, well, no, I'm sorry, that was not the one that Ted Poe was
No, Culberson was the incumbent there. And another race we've all been watching very carefully. Longtime Harris County Judge Ed Emmett has, at this point, is running neck and neck with someone that just a couple of months ago none of us had ever heard of, a 27-year-old woman, Lina Hidalgo here. And this may be the result, and we're going to talk to our panelists in just a moment, but may be the result of straight party voting. And we don't know at this point, but that's certainly worth a guess.
All right, Harris County District Clerk, there are the numbers there. Marilyn Burgess with 54%. Looks like she is winning that race, or essentially won that race, I think. And a lot of this may be because of the Beto sort of feel and wave, you know, that we talked about earlier. And we'll
And
talk to our
again,
panel members about that.
Harris County Clerk Stan Stannard at this
Right.
point may have lost as well by as much as 10 points. We do want to go right now to the smart board in the studio. Alona Carson standing by. She's got more numbers to look at as we look at the Dan Crenshaw versus Todd Litton race. And again, a pretty substantial difference there. It looks as though he's going to win this. This was the Ted Poe seat that was taken over.
Right. Alona?
Yeah, so, and you mentioned some of the straight party voting that went on, and we did see some very high percentages for that. So we might be seeing some of those effects in some of the races that we are talking about. Keaton and I are really breaking down what we are seeing in the Beto race, as this was such a huge national race, so much money poured into this. And so a lot of analysis going into what exactly happened or didn't happen. And we can still see how close this race is.
It is close. We are watching this number start to widen. We're now at about 160,000 votes or so. That's very, very close for only 82%. So we understand that the networks and the folks, they have really good modeling. The numbers that we have right now show it very, very close. Let's break down the counties, Lana.
Yeah, well, especially since we are still waiting to get a lot of our numbers here in Harris County, and then Travis County is another one that we're watching.
Right. So we've been saying this all night long, that for Beto O'Rourke to win, he has to capitalize on the urban centers. The urban centers are, of course, Dallas. He's going to win that just fine. He's winning Austin, that whole corridor there along I-35. He's doing very well in Harris County as well as Fort Bend County. He's going to win in San Antonio. The problem with all of these numbers is that they're very, very small. We look at Travis County. Turn the marker off here. Travis County, we only have the early vote. We're still at 0%. 200,000 votes breaking in favor of O'Rourke. In Dallas, the numbers are very small, 28%. You still have a good margin between the two and a good chunk of vote that's still out there. And of course, we've been talking about Harris County all night because another big chunk of votes that are just still out there, Alona. Between O'Rourke and Cruz with only 16% reporting right now, there's still a lot of votes out there. So it has been called, the modeling shows it, but a lot of votes still that is left to be counted. Now, on the other side of that, all the counties over here.
All the white that we're seeing, and they're able to project that those are all going to go. I mean, basically the whole rest of the state is Ted Cruz.
Absolutely. That's what they have to be seeing in these numbers, and that all of these that are still out will overcome all of these that are here. But we just saw an update.
There's a little surprise there.
That's a surprise. Now that is a tiny number.
Yeah, look at
but
these
Hale
numbers.
County breaking in favor of O'Rourke early. Now that's a surprise.
And
it's small, but it's a surprise.
But it is a big break, too. 922 votes to 327. Again, not going to overcome some of the big numbers. Besides this surprise and Fort Bend County that we talked about earlier, most of this map looks exactly like everybody assumed it would look going into tonight.
This is a big surprise. This is a little surprise. And there's a whole lot more vote out there. So if we see more of these, it's going to be an interesting night.
Okay.
It already is an interesting night.
In the meantime, it is already an interesting night, guys, and ABC News calling it for Ted Cruz, but obviously a very close race here in our state.
All right, that is interesting. Keaton right there, he's our stats guy right here and has been researching all the numbers. He's not ready to call it yet, but
That's
ABC
right.
has already called this race.
Exactly. Well, joining us right now are a couple of gentlemen who've been watching this very closely, not just this election, but so many others. Mustafa Hamiz, who is with the Democratic Party, and Joe Bertel. And Joe, you have been a GOP strategist, a spokesperson over the years. Any surprises tonight as you look at these numbers coming in? Did you think, for instance, that Beto O'Rourke would do as well as he has, considering we haven't had a Democrat win a statewide election in more than 20 years?
No, I think anybody who met Beto understood that he was electric. And this has been going on for a few years as he's worked his way through different organizations in different parts of the state. So when he made his announcement, I think those who had kind of been around for a long time understood that he had real potential. But at the same time, you cannot beat the mousetrap that Ted Cruz has built in Texas. Taking on Ted Cruz statewide has proven to be a losing proposition, whether you are a Republican, a Democrat, or even the current president of the United States.
Yeah, it's been 25 years since anyone has come that close in this race, you know, as a Democrat. But Mustafa, what has the Beto wave sort of done for other candidates here in Texas?
Well, you're going to see across the suburbs of Texas. When the early vote came out, Beto carried 66% of Dallas County. Fort Bend County is likely flipped today because of Beto O'Rourke.
Yeah.
You're seeing congressional races. In the state house, I think Democrats are probably going to take 14 seats, maybe 15. So in order to take over the House, Texas legislature, Democrats would have to fill 21 seats. If you picked up 14 this cycle, coming in 2020, there's an opportunity to maybe flip the Texas House. Those things just were unheard of. But
is Lizzie Fletcher
real.
a result of that as well?
Well, I think Lizzie Fletcher herself ran a great race. I think this was she raised a substantial amount of money. She worked very hard, knocked on a lot of doors. But absolutely, I mean, I think that when you're at the top of the ticket and you bring the race as close as Beto O'Rourke did. And again, look, I mean, I think we're debating here whether Ted Cruz won or not, but partly it's because Harris County's not completely in yet. Yeah. There's a number of counties that are not completely there, and the difference is, 2-3 points, so it's a fairly close race.
But We've only got a couple of seconds left, but this race was as much about who got their people out as anything. Did we see a lot of new voters here? We were at some point you were talking about the young
those
Latinos.
demographics were off the charts, and I think that's why you saw Governor Abbott suddenly talking about uniting the party, everybody coming together, because look, the message is very clear for the Texas GOP. You better get back to kitchen table issues that people can unite around, or else it's going to be a series of bad nights and election nights to come.
All right, gentlemen, thank you so much. We're going to turn our attention now to the Culberson-Fletcher race, and I believe we're going to go. It has not yet been called, but at this point, it appears as though she's a good 4 percentage points ahead of Culberson, who is the incumbent, obviously, in this race.
This is stunning here, and our panel sort of talked about that. John Culberson is a 9-term congressman there. He's been around for a long time. He's sort of iconic in that role. But look, Lizzie Fletcher comes along, runs a really good, strong campaign. As both of you said, Joe and Mustafa said the same thing, that this woman really was a surprise because of her energetic way of being able to reach the people.
Yeah. And I think, too, what you're looking at is a classic case where the GOP on the national level shot themselves in the foot. In decades past, John Culberson, as an appropriator, would have been one of the gods on Olympus after Harvey. Yeah. And removing earmarks and stopping their appropriation responsibilities, they basically rendered him moot.
We want to go to Culberson headquarters, I believe, right now. Is that where Maya Shea is?
Maya
is actually, she's at Culberson. Are people there getting worried at this point, Maya?
Well, I think people are definitely concerned. I've heard people say, hey, it's a nail biter, we're concerned, but they're sort of keeping it to themselves. You can scan the crowd here, still pretty active, still a good number of people here. Uncertain at this point when the congressman will actually show up. We don't anticipate the congressman coming for a while because we have seen some Republican activists who keep a tight eye on the numbers, and they've said, hey, we've only got 17.5% of the votes in. There's still a lot of votes out there. They believe that we had good weather election day and that Culberson overperformed on election day. That is what they're hoping for. But it's never a good sign when you're the incumbent to be down 4 points when previously you won in double digits on multiple occasions. He is hoping, of course, to keep the seats that he's had since the year 2000. We're still here. We're keeping an eye on it. As the numbers start moving, we expect people to have more reaction. But right now, they're sort of holding their breath. Back to you guys.
All right, Maya, thank you so much. And in the meantime, we want to take a live look at Lizzie Fletcher's headquarters just to get some contrast there. As you can see, there are people still standing around, not a whole lot of conversation going on, at least from this vantage point.
Yeah, that's a surprisingly sad face there. I mean, you would expect a little bit more excitement, but they are. I mean, she is ahead 4 points at this point. It has not been called. A very, very tight race, but still ahead 4 points against an incumbent, a 9-term incumbent. Certainly not good news for the Culberson camp, but certainly great news for Lizzie Fletcher camp.
Well,
and she is very, very excited about that, clearly, and no doubt we'll be hearing from her as well.
Well, and what's interesting, you also saw a lot of Beto signs there, so clearly those two very closely
riding
linked.
on his coattails as well, yes.
Well, that is it for us. We're going to toss it now back to the studio. Obviously, we will be following this throughout the evening. We'll bring you the numbers just as soon as we get them, but you want to stay tuned on air and online to ABC13.com.
As we look at the Beto campaign headquarters over there in El Paso, that is where Ted Oberg is. He'll have live shots later tonight on 10 o'clock. And there is the Ted Cruz camp. This is on the west side of Houston, and there are some speakers there talking, and clearly that is a win for Ted Cruz. He won that race, but still there is some discussion as to whether perhaps Beto still has that slim chance, but it has been called by ABC calling Ted Cruz the winner here.
And we're expecting to hear from Ted Cruz at 10 o'clock on our newscast. So once again, stay tuned both on air and online to ABC13.com. Have a good evening.
Being diagnosed with cancer made me rethink everything in my life. The things that became important to me were the relationships with people. We pulled together closer as a family. I had so many people at CTCA helping me find a way to go through treatments, to prepare me for anything that I would have faced. Cancer showed me what true living is all about. So I started helping at the School for Special Needs Children. I think they do more for me than I do for them. The reality of cancer is not everybody survives. Surviving for 5 years, it's a big deal. At CTCA, they have a huge Celebrate Life event. That was amazing because the whole day was about all of the survivors. I'm not exactly sure what's ahead of me, but I'm excited about my future.
Visit cancercenter.com to schedule an appointment now. This year on America's Veterans Day,
we, the people of Poland, mark our 100th Independence Day.
Riddler, you have us regained.
Entering World War I, America declared
an independent Polish state should be elected.
That generation fought for your freedom and ours.
Knowing freedom isn't free. So, this Veterans Day, we say thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
This holiday gives a gift of Peloton. Nothing outlasts Energizer Ultimate Lithium. Hey, you can't do that. Can he do that? Yeah, he's good. Energizer Ultimate Lithium. It's the #1 longest lasting battery. This one. What is this?
Skipping Service, brought to you by ADT.
All right, let's look at some of the tight races we're looking at right now, and one of them is in Florida. The Senate race there, it got up by about 60,000 votes over incumbent Bill Nelson, and we're not seeing a lot of vote out there yet. Carl Rove, where is this?
Well, I've got a handful of precincts, 7 in Osceola, which is up south of Orlando,